Before I could move, before I could even process what she was doing, her lips brushed against mine. Soft, quick, deliberate. It lasted no more than a second, just long enough for my brain to completely stop working when she pulled away. She looked exactly the same as always. Calm, collected, untouchable. If she hadn't just kissed her husband inside the CEO's office during business hours. I was saying. She said evenly. Don't be late. I blinked. Excuse me? She tilted her head the slightest bit. Your wife expects you home by 7. For a full 3 seconds. Neither of us spoke. Then she opened the office door herself. Have a productive day. Mr. Carter. I stared at her. She gave me the faintest warning look. Move. Right. I stepped into the hallway carrying the breakfast bag and froze. Every desk within sight had gone silent. Claire stood a few feet away holding her tablet. Two vice presidents had stopped in the middle of a conversation. The accounting team looked like someone had unplugged reality. Liam's coffee hit the floor. Nobody had heard everything, but everyone had seen enough. The CEO had walked me to the door. She had stood close. Enough to kiss me, and she had definitely said something about wife? Someone whispered it before I had even reached my desk. No way. Did she just? Was that a kiss? It couldn't have been. I swear she kissed him. Another voice answered immediately. You're hallucinating. I am not. Liam rushed toward me. What the hell just happened? Nothing. You call that nothing? It was work. Work? He pointed toward the executive offices. Our CEO has never walked anyone to the door. I shrugged. Guess today was different. What did she say? I hesitated. Nothing important. Ethan. What? What did she say? I looked him straight in the eye. She reminded me not to be late. For what? I smiled. Dinner. His eyebrows shot upward. Dinner. My wife expects me home by 7. Silence. Absolute silence. Then, Liam burst out laughing. So that's your joke? I'm serious. You don't have a wife. I do. You've been telling us you're single for years. I never said that. Yes. You did. No, he stopped. His forehead wrinkled. You absolutely. His voice faded, because he couldn't remember that I had never actually said I was single. Whenever people asked, I'd smile. Whenever they assumed, I let them. There was a difference. A very expensive difference. You. Liam muttered. You've been hiding someone? I've been private. Private? He leaned closer. Dude. Yeah? If you're married. I am. Why didn't you tell anybody? I looked back toward the executive floor. Because my wife asked me not to. He stared at me for several seconds. Then laughed again. No, yes, that you're making this up. I shrugged. Believe whatever you want. Within 20 minutes. The entire office had heard at least 6 different versions of what happened. Version 1. The CEO had promoted me. Version 2. She had fired me. Version 3. She had recruited me into a confidential acquisition. Version 4. She had slapped me. Version 5. She had confessed her love. Version 6. The funniest one. Apparently. I had imagined the entire meeting after working too many late nights. Corporate gossip moved faster than fiber optic internet. By 10 o'clock. People from departments I'd never spoken to were casually walking past my desk. Not working. Just looking. Trying to figure out what made Ethan Carter interesting enough for Victoria Sinclair to spend more than 30 seconds with. I ignored them. I opened the breakfast bag. A turkey croissant. Fresh fruit. Black coffee. Exactly how I liked it. Liam looked inside the bag. Where'd you get that? The cafeteria. He picked up the coffee cup. His expression changed. The cafeteria doesn't use these cups. I looked. He was right. The cup wasn't branded. It came from a tiny cafe 6 blocks away. Victoria's favorite cafe. She drove there every Thursday morning because they made coffee exactly the way she liked it. She had gone there before work. For me. Liam frowned. You're smiling again. I am? Yeah. You need glasses. No, he folded his arms. You definitely have someone. Before I could answer, another voice interrupted. Mr. Carter. We both turned. Ryan Mitchell, Executive Vice President. 42. Perfect haircut. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. The kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He was also the only executive who openly competed with Victoria for influence over the board. He glanced at the breakfast on my desk. Looks like the CEO takes good care of her employees. His tone sounded pleasant. His eyes didn't. It was just breakfast. I'm sure. He smiled. Interesting meeting. It was confidential. Of course. He leaned one hand against my desk. I heard something amusing. Oh, apparently you've been telling people you're married. I have. Ryan chuckled. You should be careful with jokes. It isn't a joke. Oh, he lowered his voice. You know Victoria's engaged. Don't you? I didn't answer, but he continued anyway. The board has already approved the announcement. Around us. Keyboard slowed. Nobody looked directly at us. Everyone listened. Ryan smiled wider. So, if you're claiming she kissed you, that I didn't claim anything. People might misunderstand that I didn't ask anyone to misunderstand. You know how rumors work that I do. He tapped my desk lightly. Here's some advice that I'm listening to. Don't build fantasies around successful women. Liam shifted beside me that I could tell he wanted to say something that I subtly shook my head. Ryan wasn't finished. Men sometimes confuse professional attention with personal interest that I've noticed. You don't want to embarrass yourself. That I appreciate your concern. That I sincerely hope you do. That he straightened his jacket. And Ethan? Yes? If I were you, that he smiled, that I'd stop telling people the CEO is my wife. Then he walked away. The office stayed silent until the elevator doors closed behind him. Liam looked at me. What was that? Nothing. No, he lowered his voice. That sounded personal. It probably was. You really are married, aren't you? I looked at him. For the first time since we'd met 5 years ago. I answered honestly. Yes. His mouth opened, then closed again. Can I ask one question? You'll ask anyway. Who is she? I smiled. That you'll meet her. When? Soon. He rolled his eyes. That I hate mysterious people. I know that you've become one. Maybe. Or maybe. The truth had simply reached the point where it couldn't stay hidden much longer. Because Victoria Sinclair had never done anything by accident. Not in business, not in life, and definitely not. This morning, she had kissed me knowing people would see. She had mentioned my wife knowing people would hear, which meant only one thing. She wanted something to happen. I just didn't know what. Not why. At exactly 11:07 a.m. Every phone inside Hamilton Capital vibrated simultaneously. A company-wide email. From Victoria Sinclair. Chief Executive Officer. Mandatory executive and management meeting. Attendance required. 3 p.m. Main boardroom. Liam looked up from his screen. Mandatory? Looks like it. They only do that for acquisitions. Or disasters. He swallowed. What do you think this is? I looked toward the glass-walled executive offices. Victoria was already watching the trading floor from her window. For one brief moment, our eyes met. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply held my gaze. Then turned away. A strange feeling settled in my chest. After 2 years of carefully protecting our secret, something had changed, and whatever was coming at 3 o'clock was going to change everything. I had been married for 2 years. No one knew. Not my coworkers, not human resources, not the board of directors, not even the people who had spent the last decade sharing offices, business trips, late-night deadlines, and quarterly disasters with me. As far as Hamilton Capital was concerned, I was Ethan Carter, 30 years old, senior project manager, annoyingly reliable, permanently single. It wasn't even a difficult lie to maintain. Every Monday, someone asked why I hadn't downloaded another dating app. Every Friday, someone tried to drag me to another happy hour so they could find me a decent woman. Every Christmas party, someone introduced me to a cousin, a friend, or a divorced attorney who supposedly had great energy. I smiled. I laughed. I declined. Nobody questioned it, because the only person who could expose me never would. My wife, Victoria Sinclair, the woman whose face appeared on magazine covers every other month, the youngest CEO on Wall Street, the woman financial reporters called the Ice Queen. She had insisted on absolute secrecy before we got married. No one at work can know. That had been her first condition. I remembered looking at her across the tiny courthouse where we'd signed our marriage license. Not even my team? No, my manager? No, my parents? They know. My coworkers. She had looked directly into my eyes. That if people know you're my husband, they'll stop seeing you. I don't care. I do. That had ended the conversation. Victoria always ended conversations. She wasn't loud. She wasn't dramatic. She simply made decisions, and somehow everyone accepted them, including me. 2 years later, nothing had changed, except everything had. Our marriage existed only after business hours, inside our apartment. She stole my hoodies, outside our apartment. She barely looked at me. At work, she addressed me exactly the same way she addressed everyone else. Mr. Carter, never Ethan, never honey, never my husband, just Mr. Carter. If anyone else had treated me that coldly, I probably would have quit. Instead, I fell in love with her a little more every day, because I knew what happened when nobody else was watching. She hated sleeping alone. She always stole half my breakfast. She complained every time I worked past 9. And every single night, without exception, She fell asleep with one hand wrapped around my arm. The Ice Queen melted only behind closed doors. Nobody would ever believe it, which was exactly how she wanted it. Earth to Ethan, that a paper cup landed on my desk that I looked up, that my best friend at work. Liam Brooks dropped into the chair opposite mine. You alive? Barely. You stayed late again? Yet he shook his head. One of these days you'll realize this company isn't worth dying for. I laughed at if I quit. Who's going to clean up your spreadsheets? My spreadsheets are works of art, that they're crimes against Excel. That he pointed at me. That's exactly why you're still single. What? You insult people instead of flirting. I wasn't flirting with your spreadsheet. The spreadsheet has feelings. I rolled my eyes. Liam had been trying to set me up for over a year. Every woman who smiled at me automatically became the perfect match. Last month it had been a lawyer. Last week, a physical therapist. Yesterday, our new compliance director is definitely checking you out. No, I saw her. You imagined it. I never imagined romance. You literally read romance novels. They're market research. For what market? My future marriage. I laughed despite myself. Sometimes pretending to be single became so natural, I almost forgot the truth. Almost. Until my phone buzzed. One notification. Unknown to everyone else. Completely ordinary to me. Victoria breakfast? I smiled before I realized it. Liam narrowed his eyes. There it is. What? That smile. What smile? The one that says somebody texted you. No, you've got someone. I don't. He leaned closer. Ethan. What? If you're secretly dating someone. I'm not. You know, company policy says relationships have to be disclosed if they're internal. I nearly choked on my coffee. Internal? That would be one way to describe marrying the CEO, but I'll keep that in mind. You swear you're not seeing anyone? I swear. Technically. I wasn't seeing anyone. I was living with her. At exactly 8:15, the office elevators opened. Everything changed. Nobody announced Victoria's arrival. Nobody needed to. Silence spread across the floor faster than an email marked urgent. People straightened in their chairs. Conversations died halfway through sentences. Laptop screens suddenly became fascinating. Even Liam sat up. The Queen has arrived. I looked toward the hallway. Victoria walked through the office wearing a charcoal gray suit. No unnecessary jewelry. No bright colors. No smile. She didn't rush. She never rushed. People stepped aside before she reached them. Not because she demanded it, because everyone instinctively moved. Morning, Ms. Sinclair. Morning. Good morning. She acknowledged each greeting with the slightest nod. Nothing more. Her assistant, Claire, followed several steps behind carrying a tablet. 9 o'clock with Blackstone. Victoria nodded. Confirmed. Conference call with London. Move it to 11. Board package. Already reviewed. Every answer was immediate, precise, controlled. She looked exactly like the woman every business magazine described. Untouchable, cold, perfect. She passed my desk, didn't look at me, didn't slow down, didn't acknowledge my existence. Just another employee. Exactly as planned, Liam whispered. I don't think she smiled since birth. I kept my eyes on my monitor. If she heard you, you'd be unemployed. Worth the risk. And no, come on, he lowered his voice even further. Don't tell me you've never wondered what she's like outside work. I almost laughed. If only you knew. Not really. Liar. I have deadlines. You have no imagination. Before I could answer, Claire suddenly appeared again. She wasn't walking toward the executive offices. She was walking toward me. Ethan? Every nearby head lifted. A mess. Sinclair would like to see you. Liam's mouth fell open. You? I'll be back. He grabbed my sleeve. What did you do? No idea. He looked genuinely worried. Dude. People only get called into her office for promotions or executions. I'll let you know which one. As I followed Claire through the office, I could feel dozens of eyes on my back. People whispered before I even reached the hallway. What happened? Did he lose the Morgan account? Maybe he's getting promoted. No chance. I heard the CEO hates mistakes. I wanted to tell them the truth. She doesn't hate mistakes. She hates cold coffee. She hates reality TV. She hates when I forget anniversaries. But instead, I stayed quiet. Because secrets only stayed alive if both people protected them. I pushed open the office door. Victoria didn't look up. Immediately, she finished signing a document, closed the folder, then finally raised her eyes to mine. The Ice Queen disappeared. Just for a second. You're late. I blinked. By 32 seconds. I was called here. You still arrived 32 seconds late. I'll do better next time. You will. Then, the corner of her mouth moved. Barely. Anyone else would have missed it that I didn't, that it was her version of a smile. She reached beside her desk, picked up a paper bag that I noticed you skipped breakfast. You checked, you left the apartment without eating. So you brought me breakfast. I stared at the bag. You came all the way here to give me breakfast? I was coming here anyway. Victoria, take it. I accepted the bag carefully. Our fingers touched for the briefest moment. The office door remained slightly open. Anyone walking past could see us. She knew that I knew that, which was why I expected her to step back immediately. Instead, she took one slow step closer. Her voice dropped until only I could hear it. And don't forget, what? Home. I frowned. What about home? She looked directly into my eyes then. Before I could react, she leaned forward. The company-wide email sat on my screen like a ticking bomb. Mandatory executive and management meeting. 3 p.m. Attendance required. Hamilton Capital didn't call everyone into the main boardroom unless something enormous was happening. Acquisition, lawsuit, executive reshuffle. Or someone had made a mistake so expensive that Wall Street would be talking about it before the closing bell. Liam leaned back in his chair and stared at the email. Tell me this isn't because of what happened this morning. I don't know. You don't sound convincing. Because I'm not. He rubbed both hands over his face. I've worked here for 6 years. So have I. I've never seen Victoria Sinclair kiss anyone. I picked up my coffee. You didn't. He looked offended. I know what I saw. You saw a greeting. People don't greet coworkers like that. Some cultures do. Ethan. What? Don't make me throw a stapler at you. I laughed. That only irritated him more. That you've been impossible all morning. That I've been working. That you've been dodging every question. Maybe because you keep asking the same ones. He pointed at me again. Find out I'm done asking. I appreciate that. But I sighed. There it is. If I somehow find out you've secretly been dating someone inside this company, I'm going to charge you emotional damages. I'll keep that in mind. Before he could answer, another email notification appeared. Not on the company server. On my private phone. Victoria don't react during the meeting. That was it. No explanation. No emoji. No love you. Just a single instruction. Typical Victoria. I typed a reply. Should I be worried? 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then disappeared. A full minute passed before another message arrived. Trust me. Nothing else. I stared at those 2 words. Victoria never asked for trust unless she couldn't explain something yet, whatever she was. Planning. IT had already started. At 2:55 p.m. More than 80 managers and executives filled the boardroom. People spoke in quiet voices. Nobody knew why they had been called. Rumors multiplied by the minute. The London office is being sold. No. We're acquiring a hedge fund. I heard 3 vice presidents are getting fired. My assistant says the board has been here since 7 this morning. Everyone had a theory. No one had the truth. I took my usual seat halfway down the table. Liam slid into the chair beside me. Across from us sat Ryan Mitchell. Perfect posture, perfect confidence. He smiled when he noticed me. Mr. Carter. Mr. Mitchell. I hope your afternoon has been less eventful. It's been productive. I'm glad. He glanced at the breakfast bag still sitting beside my laptop. You enjoyed your special delivery? I did. Excellent. His smile widened. The CEO is very generous. There was something underneath every word he spoke. Something sharp. He wasn't making conversation. He was testing me, trying to see whether I'd contradict myself, trying to find out how much I actually knew. I gave him nothing. The room suddenly became silent. Victoria walked in. No announcement. No dramatic entrance. She simply entered with Claire, a leather folder in one hand and a tablet in the other. Every conversation stopped. The board members rose first. The rest of us followed. Good afternoon, she said. Please sit. We did. She remained standing. Her eyes swept across the room once. Professional, calm, impossible to read. I'll keep this brief. Nobody moved. Hamilton Capital has completed its strongest fiscal quarter in company history. A slide appeared on the screen behind her. Revenue, growth, international expansion, record numbers. Several executives exchanged relieved looks. Good news at least. That's what they thought. Victoria clicked to the next slide. The board has approved the next phase of our expansion strategy. More numbers, new offices, European partnerships. A technology investment. Everything sounded routine until she closed the presentation. There is one final announcement. The atmosphere changed immediately. Even Liam stopped fidgeting. Victoria folded her hands. Yes, many of you know. She paused. There have been persistent rumors regarding my personal life. Every eye in the room lifted. Ryan smiled, almost proudly. Victoria continued that I generally don't address private matters. She looked completely composed. However, recent speculation has become a distraction. N01 breathed, so today. She stopped again. I'd like to clarify one thing. Ryan leaned back comfortably. He looked absolutely certain he already knew what she was about to say, that I felt my phone vibrate beneath the table. Another message from Victoria that I didn't look at it. She had already told me not to react, and I intended to keep that promise. Victoria looked across the room. Not at me, to at everyone. My family has recently arranged an engagement. The room erupted with applause before she could continue. Several executives smiled. Someone even congratulated her out loud. Ryan was the first to stand. Congratulations, Ms. Sinclair. Others quickly followed. Congratulations. Wonderful news. Best wishes. Victoria waited patiently until the noise settled. Then she raised one hand. There seems to be a misunderstanding. The room fell silent again. That I did not say. Her voice remained perfectly even. That I am the one getting engaged. Ryan's smile froze. That I said. My family arranged an engagement. She clicked the remote. A photograph appeared on the screen. A young woman stood beside an older couple. She looked remarkably like Victoria, only warmer, more approachable. My younger sister, Evelyn Sinclair, Victoria said calmly, will be marrying Daniel Rhodes this autumn. Silence. Several executives blinked. Ryan's expression barely changed, but I noticed it. His jaw tightened. Only for a second. The engagement celebration, Victoria continued, will take place next Friday evening. Another slide appeared. Sinclair Family Charity Gala. Formal attire required, attendance mandatory for senior management. A murmur spread through the room. A charity gala? Mandatory? That wasn't normal. Victoria continued. Many of our international investors will attend. This is both a family event and a business event. You are expected to represent Hamilton Capital accordingly. Claire began distributing printed invitations down both sides of the table. One by one. Elegant black envelopes landed in front of every manager. Mine arrived last. I opened it. Inside was a cream-colored card embossed with silver lettering. Guest invitation. Family members welcome. I read that last line twice. Family members welcome. My heartbeat slowed. Victoria had chosen those words carefully, very carefully. Across the table, Ryan laughed softly. He looked directly at me. Mr. Carter. Yes? I suppose this means you'll finally introduce us to your mysterious wife. Several heads turned toward me. Liam looked equally curious. The room waited. I closed the invitation, smiled, and answered in the calmest voice I could manage. Yes, I think it's time. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Ryan smiled, but something in his eyes had changed. For the first time all day, he no longer looked amused. He looked concerned. Ryan's smile lingered for another second. Then it disappeared. Not completely, just enough for me to notice. Most people would have missed it. Ryan Mitchell had spent years building the image of a polished executive. He smiled when deals collapsed. He smiled when competitors insulted him. He smiled when the market erased millions from someone's portfolio. But this smile, this one cracked. Only for a heartbeat. Then it was back. Excellent. He said smoothly. We'll finally meet Mrs. Carter. I hope so. Several people laughed awkwardly. Liam looked from Ryan to me and back again. You weren't kidding? I rarely joke during meetings. He stared at me another second. I honestly don't know whether you're the bravest man in this company or the craziest. Maybe both. Victoria closed the folder in front of her. If there are no questions regarding the gala, we'll move to the quarterly restructuring. Hands immediately went up. Not because anyone cared about restructuring. Everyone wanted to ask about the engagement. Nobody dared, finally. One of the regional directors cleared his throat. Ms. Sinclair. Yes? Congratulations to your sister. Thank you. We look forward to meeting your family. Victoria nodded politely. I'm sure the evening will be memorable. I almost smiled when Victoria described something as memorable. It usually meant people would still be talking about it months later. The meeting shifted back to business, department budgets, hiring approvals, European expansion, risk assessments. I answered 2 questions regarding my division and kept my attention fixed on the financial projections. Still, I could feel Ryan watching me. Every time I looked up, his eyes were already somewhere else. It wasn't curiosity anymore. He was evaluating me, trying to solve a puzzle. The meeting finally adjourned after nearly 90 minutes. People stood, collected tablets and folders. and immediately formed small groups. Nobody talked about the budget. Everybody talked about me. Did you hear what Carter said? Apparently, he's bringing his wife. I thought he was single. Maybe he got married recently. No ring. Some people don't wear one. Liam caught up with me before I reached the hallway. You owe me an explanation. I do. You absolutely do. He grabbed my arm before I could escape. No work excuses, no meetings, no mysterious text messages. We're talking to I have reports to finish. They'll survive. He practically dragged me into the employee lounge the moment the door closed. He folded his arms. Start talking. About what? Ethan. What? If you ask about what one more time, I'm going to throw that coffee machine at you. I glanced toward the enormous espresso machine. I don't think you can lift it. I'll find motivation. I laughed. He didn't. This isn't funny. I know. So he took a slow breath. Who is she? My wife. I'm aware. What do you want to know? Everything. That's a long conversation. I canceled my afternoon. You had meetings. They can wait. I leaned against the counter. She's smart. No kidding. She's stubborn. I can see that. She works too much. So do you? She steals my fries. Liam blinked. What? My fries. That's your description? It's an important character trait. Ethan. What? I'm asking about your wife. I know. Not her eating habits. They're connected. How? If someone steals your fries. They're planning a future with you. He stared for several seconds. I've never heard anything so ridiculous. It happens. Seriously. I sighed. I can't tell you who she is. Why? I promised to TO her. Yes. He rubbed his forehead. So she's real. Very. And she's not in finance? I didn't say that. You didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it either. Liam pointed a finger at me. You know what? What? I hate secrets. I know. I also hate how calm you are. I'm calm. Your entire office thinks the CEO kissed you. And you're acting like. Someone complimented your tie. I almost answered. Instead, I smiled. That was dangerous enough. At 4:30. My phone vibrated again. Victoria, dinner tonight. Don't order takeout. I replied almost immediately. Wasn't planning to. Her response came seconds later. Good. No heart. No emoji. Just. Good. If anyone ever stole our text messages, they'd assume we were discussing quarterly reports. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Ryan was waiting outside my office. Of course he was. He smiled as I approached. Leaving already? It's almost 5. I admire people who maintain work-life balance. I tried. He fell into step beside me. You know what I've been thinking about? You. That's flattering. IT isn't meant to be. I figured. He chuckled. I've reviewed your file. I looked at him. My file? You've been with Hamilton almost 7 years. Correct. Excellent. Performance. Thank you. No disciplinary record. It or why. No political alliances. I prefer work. You've declined promotions twice. I liked my team. Interesting choice. We reached the elevators. Neither of us pressed a button. Ryan continued. And despite all that, he turned slightly toward me. The CEO remembers whether you've eaten breakfast. I didn't answer. He watched me carefully. You don't find that unusual? She's considerate. To everyone. Sometimes. I've worked with Victoria for 8 years. So I've heard. Never seen her bring breakfast to anyone. Silence. I've also never seen her touch an employee. Silence again. So he smiled. Either you're incredibly lucky, or something else is happening. The elevator doors opened. People stepped out. Neither of us moved. Finally, I said quietly, what do you think is happening? Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly. I think. Everyone has something they're hiding. Then he walked away. By 6:30, I was driving home through Manhattan traffic. Normally Victoria arrived before me. Tonight, her car was already in the garage. That surprised me. She almost never left the office before 7. I unlocked the apartment. The smell hit me first. Garlic, butter, fresh rosemary. Victoria was cooking. Now that was unusual. Very unusual. I found her standing in the kitchen wearing one of my old college sweatshirts instead of the immaculate business suits the world associated with Victoria Sinclair. Her hair was tied back. She looked over her shoulder. You're 2 minutes early. I thought. You'd be pleased. I am. She returned to stirring the sauce. Without another word. I loosened my tie. You cooked. I did. Should I be worried? No. Did the market crash? No. Did someone resign? No. Then why are you cooking? She looked at me with perfectly straight face. I missed my husband. For a second I forgot how to speak. She noticed. The corner of her lips lifted. There. What? I won. You planned that. I did. You knew I'd freeze. I know you. She plated the pasta. I also know you've had a long day. I walked over and wrapped my arms gently around her waist from behind. She relaxed immediately. No hesitation, no resistance. The Ice Queen disappeared completely the moment our apartment door closed. She leaned back against me. How bad was today? I rested my chin lightly against her shoulder. You caused absolute chaos. I expected that. The office thinks we're having an affair. She laughed softly. A very committed affair. We've been married 2 years. Exactly. I kissed the side of her head. You enjoyed this. A little. A little? Maybe more than a little. I laughed. I knew it. She turned in my arms. For the first time all day. There wasn't a CEO standing in front of me. There was only Victoria. My wife. She reached up and adjusted my tie. You trusted me today. I always do. You didn't question the gala. I assumed you had a reason. I do. She became serious again. Next Friday. Yes? Everything changes. I searched her face. What happens next Friday? She hesitated. That almost never happened. Then she asked quietly. Ethan. If every person in that company knew who you really were, would you still choose me? I frowned. What kind of question is that? A serious one. I married you. I know I'd marry you again. And if everyone judged you because of me, they already do. If they hated you, I'd still come home. If they called you a gold digger, I'd still come home. If they said your career only exists because you're my husband, I smiled. They're welcome to believe whatever they want. She looked into my eyes for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Why? Because after next Friday, they won't have to imagine anymore. I was about to ask another question. Her phone rang. The screen lit up on the kitchen island. Ryan Mitchell. Victoria's expression changed instantly. Not cold. Not angry. Calculating. She answered on speaker. Ryan, sorry to bother you this evening. It's fine. I've been reviewing guest confirmations. So have I. I noticed something. What? Ethan Carter accepted the invitation. Victoria glanced at me briefly. Yes, I thought he mentioned bringing his wife. He did. Ryan laughed quietly. I'm looking forward to meeting her. Victoria's voice remained perfectly calm. SOM. After the call ended, silence settled across the kitchen. I looked at Victoria. He's suspicious. Yes. Does he know? No, but... She picked up her wine glass. He's getting close. She met my eyes. And that's exactly what I wanted. Ryan's phone call lasted less than a minute. IT was enough. The moment Victoria placed her phone face down on the kitchen island, neither of us spoke. She didn't need to explain why Ryan had called. I already understood. He wasn't interested in my imaginary wife. He was interested in me. Or more accurately, why Victoria Sinclair seemed to care about me. That wasn't something Ryan tolerated. He spent years trying to understand every move she made, every investment, every promotion, every acquisition. He believed every decision had a financial motive. He had never considered one possibility: love. Victoria took a sip of wine before breaking the silence. He'll investigate you. I figured. He already has. I looked up. What do you mean? He requested your personnel file this afternoon. I wasn't surprised. He won't find anything. No, she rested both hands on the counter. But he'll notice something. What? You've turned down 3 promotions. Because I liked my team. I know he'll think that's strange. He already does. I smiled. He'll probably decide I'm either incredibly loyal or incredibly stupid. Victoria's expression softened. You've always been underestimated. I don't mind. I do. She crossed the kitchen and stopped in front of me. You know why I fell in love with you? I thought it was because I made excellent coffee. Your coffee is terrible. I'm choosing to ignore that. A faint smile appeared. I fell in love with you because everyone else tried to impress me. And I didn't. You forgot who I was. I laughed. I did. You asked me if I worked in accounting. You were carrying a calculator. I was reviewing acquisition models. Same difference. She shook her head. You didn't recognize my name. I recognized it later. 3 hours later. I was busy. You corrected my Excel formulas. They were wrong. They weren't wrong. They were inefficient. Victoria sighed dramatically. You argued with the CEO of Hamilton Capital for 27 minutes. I thought you were an analyst. You told me my presentation looked boring. IT did. You had no idea who I was. I honestly didn't. And when you finally realized, she waited. I finished the sentence. I apologized. No, she smiled. You asked if that meant you had to stop criticizing my spreadsheets. I laughed out loud. That sounds like me. It absolutely sounds like you. For a few moments, neither of us mentioned Ryan. Or the gala. Or work. It felt wonderfully normal. Then my phone rang. Liam. I answered. Hey, Ethan. His voice was unusually serious. Are you busy? A little. I need 5 minutes. What's wrong? You remember Melissa from compliance? Yeah. Her boyfriend works in corporate security. Okay, that he told her Ryan ordered background checks on 3 employees that I exchanged a glance with Victoria. Who? You thought I expected that. Claire. Victoria raised an eyebrow. And Liam lowered his voice. Victoria Sinclair. I frowned. What? He requested information on the CEO. That doesn't even make sense. I know. My guess? He thinks there's a connection. I looked at Victoria again. She was already thinking 3 moves ahead. I'll handle it. I said, you know what's going on. Don't you? I know enough. Ethan, Liam hesitated. I've trusted you for years. I know. So trust me back. There it was. The request I'd been dreading. I couldn't tell him everything. Not yet. But he deserved something. Liam. Yeah? Next Friday. What about it? Come to the gala. I'm already invited. Stay until the end. Why? Because every question you've asked me this week will finally have an answer. Silence. Then, you're serious. I am. He let out a slow breath. I don't know what you're hiding. I'm not hiding forever. Promise? I promise. Okay. He hung up. Victoria smiled faintly. You trust him. I do. So do I. I looked at her in surprise. You've met him exactly twice. I've watched him for years. You have? He stayed with you when your father died. I nodded slowly. He refused a promotion because transferring departments would have left you alone during the Henderson merger. I didn't know that. He never told you to. No, he never intended to. Victoria folded her arms. Loyal people are rare. There. I like him. You should. He'll be furious next. Friday? Definitely. The next morning. The office was waiting. Not literally, but it felt that way. The moment I stepped onto the trading floor. Conversations paused. Someone whispered, there he is. Another voice answered, ask him. No. You asked. I'm not asking. Liam walked over carrying 2 coffees. You've become famous. I noticed. Someone started a betting pool. I stared at him. A betting pool? Yeah. For what? He looked almost embarrassed. Who your wife is? I laughed. Seriously? I'm serious. What are the odds? He pulled out his phone. You want to know? Absolutely. He scrolled. Secret college sweetheart is 4-1. Okay. Foreign diplomat is 8-1. Creative, undercover FBI agent is 12-1. I nearly choked on my coffee. What? It gets better. He kept reading. Victoria Sinclair herself. He looked at me. 500-1. I couldn't stop laughing. Liam stared. What? Nothing. You've been weird all week. I know. You laugh at the strangest things. If only you knew. He sighed. I hate that sentence. At exactly 10 o'clock. Claire appeared beside my desk. Mr. Carter, morning. Claire, the CEO needs yesterday's acquisition analysis. I'll bring it. She nodded. Then, in a voice only I could hear, and she's worried you skipped breakfast again. I blinked. Claire's face remained perfectly professional. If you don't eat before noon. She says she'll come downstairs herself. Then she walked away. I stood completely still. Liam looked at me. What was that? Work. That wasn't work. IT involved work. You turned red. I did not. You absolutely did. He leaned closer. Then what? You're smiling again. 18 noon. Ryan made his move. He didn't come alone. He walked across the trading floor with Amanda Pierce. Director of Human Resources. Amanda smiled politely. Ethan, good afternoon. Oh, you have a moment? Of course. Ryan folded his hands behind his back. That we're conducting routine employee profile updates. Sounds exciting. Amanda laughed awkwardly. It won't take long. She opened a tablet. Marital status. I looked at Ryan. Then back at Amanda. Married. She blinked. Excuse me? Married. Ryan spoke before she could. Our records list you as single. They're outdated. Amanda frowned. When were you married? 2 years ago. Silence. She looked down at the screen again. Why didn't you report the change? I wasn't required to. Ryan smiled. Actually, he looked at Amanda. Employees are encouraged to update emergency contact information. They are. Amanda nodded. I probably should have. Ryan continued smoothly. So who's your spouse? I smiled. My wife. Amanda almost laughed. Ryan didn't. He watched me carefully. I'm afraid we'll need a name. I'm afraid that's private. Amanda looked uncomfortable. Ryan remained perfectly calm. It shouldn't. It is. You understand that conflicts of interest matter. I do. Then surely you don't mind clarifying. I do mind. For several long seconds. Nobody spoke. Finally, Amanda closed the tablet. We'll revisit this later. Of course. They walked away. Ryan never looked back. But I knew exactly what he was thinking. He hadn't learned anything. Which meant he would dig even deeper. And when Ryan Mitchell started digging, he never stopped until he found something. Or someone. That afternoon. As I walked toward the executive elevators carrying Victoria's report, Claire intercepted me halfway down the corridor. She looked unusually tense. Is everything okay? I asked. She glanced behind her before answering. He hired a private investigator. I stopped for me. For both of you. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Claire lowered her voice. He doesn't know the truth. Not yet. But he's getting desperate. She handed me the folder. The CEO said to tell you one thing. What? Claire smiled. Don't ruin the surprise. She turned and disappeared through the executive doors. I stood there holding the report, thinking about Ryan, thinking about the gala, thinking about next Friday. Only 7 days remained. 7 days until every lie, every rumor, every assumption inside Hamilton Capital would collide with the truth. And judging by the way Ryan was escalating, someone was going to lose far more than their reputation. I stood in the hallway for almost a full minute after Claire disappeared. A private investigator. Ryan had actually hired one. Most people would have laughed it off. I didn't. Ryan Mitchell wasn't the type of executive who wasted money chasing office gossip. If he had hired an investigator, it meant he believed there was something valuable hidden beneath the rumors. The problem for him was that the truth was stranger than anything he could possibly imagine. I knocked twice before entering Victoria's office. Come in. She didn't look up immediately. 3 monitors covered one side of her desk, each displaying a different financial model. Without lifting her eyes, she said, "Close the door." I did. Only then did she look at me. "Claire told you." She did. "You look calmer than I expected. I trust you." She studied me for a moment. "You always answer too quickly, because it's always true." A faint smile crossed her face. "I wish I could tell you everything. You'll tell me when you're ready." I will. She stood and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window, folding her arms. Ryan isn't looking for evidence of an affair. I figured. He's looking for leverage. I leaned against the edge of the conference table. Against you, against us. That single word, us, carried more weight than anything she'd said all day. She rarely used it inside the office. Outside these walls, we were husband and wife. Inside, we were CEO and employee. The line had always been clear. Now it was beginning to blur. "I have a question," I said. She turned. "You usually have several. Only one today. Go ahead." "Why now?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked back to her desk and picked up a framed photograph. She handed it to me. It was one of the few personal items she kept in the office. The picture had been taken years before I met her. Victoria, her younger sister Evelyn, and an older gentleman standing between them. Silver hair, sharp blue eyes, even smiling. He looked intimidating. "Your grandfather." She nodded. "Charles Sinclair. He built this company. He built everything." She looked at the photograph for another second before setting it back down. "He turns 75 next week." I know that he announced his retirement yesterday. That surprised me. He didn't tell the public. He hasn't. Only the family knows. I frowned. "SOY." She met my eyes. "Because retirement changes everything." She poured 2 cups of coffee before continuing. "My grandfather has spent 50 years controlling the Sinclair family. I've noticed that you've only seen the polite version." I accepted the coffee. "He believes every decision should strengthen the family name. Business first. Always. And love?" She gave a humorless laugh. "Love is useful if it helps business." I remembered something she'd once told me during our first year of marriage. I and my family. Engagement announcements are treated like merger agreements. The time. I'd thought she was joking. She hadn't been. He never approved of us. I said quietly. "No, but he accepted it. He accepted that he couldn't stop me." She took a slow sip of coffee. "Now he's retiring. And every branch of the family wants influence." I understood immediately. "The board." She nodded. "The company. The inheritance. Everything." Silence settled between us. Finally, I asked. "So the gala isn't really about your sister." "It never was. It's about succession." "Exactly." She walked around the desk. "Next Friday, every major shareholder, every board member, every member of my family, and every international investor will be in one room. And you're planning something. I am." "What?" She smiled. "If I tell you, you'll accidentally warn me with your face that I have a terrible poker face. The worst. I've beaten you at poker. Once. Twice. You cheated. I married the dealer." She laughed. The sound was quiet, warm, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. "I've missed this." "What?" "Having lunch together." I looked around the office. "We're not exactly having lunch. No, but we're talking. I can fix the lunch part." She raised an eyebrow. "You cooked yesterday." "So tonight I cook." "You?" "I make an excellent grilled cheese." "Ethan." "What?" That's not cooking.it absolutely is.it absolutely isn't. We'll let history decide. That be why the time I returned to my department. The rumor mill had evolved again. Liam walked into my office without knocking. I have news that I can tell. You know the betting pool? Unfortunately, it doubled. Wonderful that he dropped into the chair across from me. There are now 32 theories. 32. Somebody thinks your wife is a European princess. I wish her luck. Someone else believes you're in witness protection. I laughed. That's creative. The best one. He grinned. They think you've secretly married Victoria Sinclair. I looked down at the report in my hands to hide my expression. And what did you say? I said that's impossible. Why? He looked genuinely confused. Because she'd have fired you by now. I burst out laughing. He frowned. What? Nothing. You've laughed at that joke 3 times today, have I? It's starting to concern me. Before I could answer, Melissa from compliance hurried toward us. Ethan, everything okay? She lowered her voice. I probably shouldn't tell you this. Then definitely tell me. She glanced over both shoulders. My boyfriend says corporate security requested visitor records, so they're checking everyone who's entered this building during the last 2 years. Liam frowned. For what? Melissa looked directly at me. For someone who never signed in. The smile faded from my face. Victoria and I had always been careful that we never arrived together, never left together, never acted familiar inside the building. But there had been exceptions. Late nights, emergency meetings, weekends. If Ryan compared enough records, he wouldn't find proof, but he'd find patterns. And Ryan loved patterns. At 6 o'clock my phone buzzed. Victoria meeting ran late. Start dinner without me. I replied. Grilled cheese is still happening. 3 dots appeared. Then, don't burn the apartment. I smiled. No promises. Her reply came almost instantly. That's exactly what worries me. I slipped the phone into my pocket. Liam noticed. There it is again. What? That smile. I don't smile. You absolutely do. He shook his head. You know that I've spent 5 years trying to figure you out. And I've failed. Sorry that I don't think you're sorry. I'm a little sorry. He stood and picked up his jacket. Next. Friday, what about it? I don't know what you're planning. I'm not planning anything. That's the biggest lie you've ever told me. He walked toward the door before stopping. But whatever happens, he looked back at me. I hope it works. I smiled. Oh, do I? After he left. I sat alone in the quiet office. The trading floor had emptied. The lights dimmed automatically. For the first time all day, there was silence. I opened my desk drawer to grab my keys. Something white caught my EYN envelope. NO stamped. NO name. Just one word typed across the front. A cold feeling crept up my spine that I hadn't seen it there that morning. Someone had placed it in my drawer during the day. I opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. 5 typed words. I know who she is. Nothing else. NO signatured. NO explanation. NO threat. Just those 5 words. I stared at the page for several long seconds. Then my phone rang. Victoria. I answered immediately. Hey. Before I could say anything else, her voice came through the speaker. Ethan. She sounded calmer than usual, which somehow made me even more uneasy. Don't leave the office. I straightened. Why? We have a problem. What happened? A brief silence. Then she said the last words I expected to hear. Ryan found something. My grip tightened around the phone. Ryan found something? Victoria didn't answer immediately. I could hear papers moving on her end, followed by the sound of a door closing. When she spoke again, her voice dropped. He's on his way out of the building. I'm still in my office. Stay there. What did he find? He thinks he found your wife. I blinked. What? I said he thinks he found your wife. The knot in my stomach loosened slightly. He doesn't know it's you. No, then why does this sound like bad news? Because he's confident. And confident people make dangerous decisions. I looked down at the anonymous note still resting in my hand. I know who she is. I found something too. What? An envelope. Silence. Then, don't touch anything else. I already opened it. What did it say? I read the 5 words aloud. Victoria didn't respond for several seconds. Finally, she asked, did anyone see you open it? No good. You know who left it? I have an idea. Ryan? No, that answer surprised me. Then who? Someone who wants Ryan to believe he's winning. 20 minutes later, Victoria walked into my office. Not as my wife, as the CEO. Claire followed 2 steps behind carrying a folder. Victoria glanced around the nearly empty floor. Mr. Carter. I stood. Ms. Sinclair. I need the revised Hawthorne projections. They're ready. I handed her a folder. She accepted it without touching my hand. Anyone watching security footage would see nothing unusual. Claire remained near the door. Victoria flipped through several pages before speaking again. Walk with me. Of course, that we crossed the quiet executive corridor together. Neither of us spoke until Claire stopped outside the conference room. I'll wait here, Claire said. Victoria opened the conference room door. The moment it closed behind us, she exhaled. I hate pretending. So do I. As she walked straight to the windows overlooking Manhattan. He hired Mason. Who's Mason? A former federal investigator. Private investigator now? She nodded. He specializes in corporate fraud. Great. He spent the last 3 days following you. I thought back. The black SUV parked across the street. The man reading a newspaper in the cafe. The same silver sedan appearing twice during my commute. I noticed someone. I know. You knew? I had security watching him. I couldn't help smiling. And my wife had someone watching the man watching me. Yes, that's slightly terrifying. I thought you'd find it romantic. I do. She laughed quietly. What exactly did Mason find? I asked. Victoria placed 3 photographs on the conference table. The first showed me leaving Hamilton Capital. The second showed me entering our apartment building. The third. I frowned. A woman wearing a dark coat entered the lobby 5 minutes later. Her face wasn't visible. That's supposed to be my wife? According to Mason. It isn't you. No, I looked closer. The height is wrong. The hair is wrong. The shoes are definitely wrong. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You notice shoes? I notice your shoes. She tried not to smile. Flatterer, it's true. She tapped the third photograph. Mason believes this woman has been meeting you several nights a week. Has he actually seen us together? No, then why assume she's my wife? Because someone wanted him to. I looked up. What does that mean? Victoria folded her arms. Somebody has been feeding him information. False information. Exactly. So Ryan thinks he's getting closer, which means he'll become careless. She nodded once. That's what we're waiting for. A knock interrupted. Us. Claire stepped inside. Ms. Sinclair. Yes? The chairman has arrived. Victoria's expression changed immediately. When, 30 seconds ago, she glanced toward me. Stay here. I've never met your grandfather. You will. I should leave. No, she stopped walking. Actually. A thoughtful look crossed her face. Come with me. I stared. As an employee, as my project manager. I don't think he'll appreciate that. I don't particularly care. Before I could answer, she was already opening the door. Charles Sinclair was standing in Victoria's office when we entered, even at 74. He commanded the room without saying a word. Silver hair, dark navy suit, and a polished wooden cane he clearly didn't need. His sharp blue eyes landed on me first, so his voice was calm. This is Ethan Carter. I stepped forward at Mr. Sinclair. He ignored my outstretched hand. Instead, he looked me up and down like he was evaluating a company before an acquisition. You look younger than I expected. I get that a lot. Victoria shot me a warning glance. Apparently joking with the founder of a multi-billion-dollar company wasn't recommended. Charles finally shook my hand. His grip was surprisingly firm. I've read your performance reviews. I hope they were favorable. They were. He released my hand. My granddaughter thinks highly of you. I glanced toward Victoria. She remained perfectly composed. I try to earn that confidence. Charles nodded slowly. Interesting answer. He walked to the window. I understand you've refused promotion twice. Yes. Why? I enjoyed building teams more than managing titles. He looked back at me. Most people chase power. I chase meaningful work. He studied me for another long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Just a little. You sound exactly like your father. My heart skipped. You knew my father? We met twice. I didn't know that. He never mentioned it. Charles looked out over the city again. He was an honest man. He also disagreed with me. I've inherited that habit. Victoria coughed quietly. Charles laughed. Actually laughed. Yes, I can see that. After several minutes discussing one of my projects, Charles prepared to leave the office door. He stopped, without turning around. He spoke. The gala is in 6 days. Yes. Sir. Victoria answered. I expect no surprises. I understand. He nodded once, then looked at me over his shoulder. Mr. Carter, sir, whatever happens next Friday, stand beside my granddaughter. The room became completely silent. I intend to. Charles held my gaze for another second. Good. Then he walked away. The door closed. Victoria looked almost as surprised as I felt. What was that about? She slowly let out a breath. I don't think. She paused. He dislikes you as much as he pretends. I smiled. I'll take that as progress. She stepped closer. Oh, will I? Before either of us could say another word, Claire hurried back into the office. She wasn't calm this time. Ms. Sinclair. What happened? Claire handed her a tablet. The investigator just sent Ryan his first official report. Victoria looked down at the screen. Her expression hardened that I moved beside her to the top of the report. In bold letters were 6 words. Subject confirmed. Ethan Carter's wife identified. Victoria looked at me, then quietly said that they're about to make their first mistake. Victoria handed the tablet to me. I skimmed the first page. The report was polished, professional, confident. It even included timestamps, photographs, and a neatly organized timeline of my movements over the previous 3 weeks. If I hadn't known better, I probably would have believed it. Halfway down the page, a name appeared. Subject believed to be spouse. Olivia Bennett. I frowned. Olivia Bennett? Victoria nodded once. Senior architect. I've never met her. You crossed paths once. When? 3 months ago. I searched my memory. Nothing. Victoria reached over and enlarged one of the surveillance photos. A rainy evening. The lobby of our apartment building. A woman holding a large portfolio case. I looked again. Then remembered. The elevator. Victoria smiled faintly. Exactly. I held the elevator for her. You also carried her portfolio upstairs. It weighed 100 pounds. It contained building blueprints. I didn't know that. You never asked. I didn't think I needed to. Victoria folded her arms. According to Ryan's investigator, that makes her your secret wife. I couldn't help laughing. This is the evidence? There are 36 pages. I hope the rest is better. It isn't. She flipped through the report. One photograph showed Olivia leaving a grocery store. 5 minutes later, another photograph showed me entering the same store. The report labeled it coordinated shopping behavior. Another page highlighted the fact that we had parked in the same garage twice. A third claimed we'd attended the same charity fundraiser that we did. Victoria said, "So did 300 other people." I shook my head. Someone spent money on this. A considerable amount. Ryan's going to be disappointed. And no, Victoria's expression became thoughtful. He isn't looking for the truth anymore. What is he looking for? A story. Claire knocked once before entering. A mess. Sinclair. Yes? The executive committee meeting has been moved to tomorrow morning. Victoria accepted the updated schedule. Anything else? Claire hesitated. There is. She glanced toward me. Mr. Mitchell has requested a private dinner with the chairman. Victoria's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. When? Tomorrow evening. Reason? He says he'd like to discuss succession planning. Silence. Claire continued. He specifically requested that no members of the Sinclair family attend. The room became very quiet after Claire left. I looked at Victoria. That sounds deliberate. It is. You think he'll show your grandfather the report? Almost certainly. And your grandfather? She looked out the window. He believes evidence. You mean he believes paperwork? I mean. She turned back toward me. He believes people who appear prepared. I looked down at the report again. So Ryan walks into dinner with 36 pages of fabricated evidence. Yes. And if your grandfather believes him? Victoria didn't answer. She didn't have to. The implications were obvious. If Charles Sinclair concluded that someone inside Hamilton Capital had manipulated his granddaughter, the consequences wouldn't stop with me. Later that afternoon, I found Liam waiting beside my desk. He looked unusually excited. You busy? Depends. I have gossiped. I was afraid of that. No, this one's real. He sat on the corner of my desk. I just came from legal. That's always reassuring. They're preparing non-disclosure agreements for the gala. I frowned. Guests have to sign them? Not all guests. He lowered his voice. Only the executives. Interesting. You know what's even stranger? What? The board reserved the entire ballroom. So? They also reserved the adjoining conference center. I blinked. For a charity gala? Exactly. He leaned closer. Nobody throws a charity dinner with 6 corporate attorneys sitting next door. That he wasn't wrong. Victoria never wasted money. If she'd reserved a conference center, it wasn't for overflow parking. It was for business. Real business. You know something. Liam said. No, you definitely do. I don't. You smiled. I smile all the time. You smile when you're hiding something. I smile because you're entertaining. That's not a denial. It wasn't supposed to be. He sighed dramatically. I missed the version of you who was boring. I was never boring. You absolutely were. That evening, I left the office later than usual. The anonymous envelope from yesterday remained locked in my desk drawer. Victoria had asked me not to touch it again until security examined it. I trusted her. I stepped into the underground parking garage. My phone buzzed. Victoria didn't drive home yet. I frowned. Why? Her reply came almost immediately. Someone is following you. I looked casually across the garage. Nothing unusual. Employees heading to their cars. A security guard chatting with maintenance at a black SUV parked near the exit. Wait, black SUV. I'd seen it before. Twice this week. My phone rang. I answered without taking my eyes off the vehicle. Which one? The SUV. I thought so. Walk toward the east elevators. I'm on the west side. I know. SOY east? Because I'm already there. Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened. Victoria stepped out, still wearing her charcoal gray suit, still carrying her laptop bag, still looking like she'd just finished negotiating a billion-dollar acquisition. She walked straight toward me, not too quickly, not too slowly, professional, controlled, until she reached my side, without looking at me. She said quietly, "Keep walking." We continued toward the east exit together. Security? I asked, watching. The investigator? No, Ryan? No, then who? I don't know. That answer surprised me. Victoria almost always knew. We reached the glass doors leading outside. A silver sedan pulled up to the curb. Our head of corporate security, Marcus Hill, stepped out. He opened the rear door. Ms. Sinclair. She nodded. Thank you. Marcus looked at me. Mr. Carter. Marcus. He glanced back toward the parking garage. The SUV left as soon as you changed direction. Oh, they weren't after the sale. No, his eyes settled on me. They were waiting for you. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Victoria met Marcus's gaze. Keep your team on this. Already done. He paused, and his voice became more serious. Someone accessed archived employee files tonight. Whose? Marcus looked directly at me. Your father's. I froze. My father worked here 20 years ago. Marcus nodded. Exactly. Victoria's expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. She whispered almost to herself. Oh, that's what Ryan is really looking for. I turned toward her. What does my father have to do with any of this? She looked at me for a long moment, then quietly said. I think it's time I told you what really happened before we met. For a moment, I forgot about the black SUV. I forgot about Ryan. I even forgot about the anonymous letter sitting in my desk drawer. My father. My voice came out lower than I expected. You knew him better than you've ever admitted. Victoria looked through the windshield instead of at me. I did. Marcus closed the car door behind us. I'll take another vehicle. He said. If anything changes, call me immediately. Victoria nodded. We will. Marcus walked away without another word. The sedan pulled away from the curb. Only then did I turn back to Victoria. Start from the beginning. She rested her hands in her lap. I've wanted to tell you for a long time. So why didn't you? Because it wasn't my story. I frowned. It became ours the day we got married. She looked at me. I know. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she began. 12 years ago. I was 20-3. My grandfather had just named me executive vice president. I thought I understood business. She smiled faintly. I was wrong. I made a mistake. What kind? A very expensive one. She looked out the window. I approved an acquisition. It looked perfect. The numbers worked. The lawyers approved it. The consultants recommended it. And then it collapsed. I stayed quiet. She continued. The company we bought had hidden debt. Not millions, hundreds of millions. I looked at her. I don't remember reading about that. You wouldn't. My grandfather buried the story. Only a handful of people ever knew. What happened? For 48 hours, Hamilton Capital almost lost everything. That caught me completely off guard. Hamilton Capital was one of the most respected investment firms in New York. I had never heard anyone suggest it had once been close to disaster. Victoria noticed my expression. It wasn't public. It almost became public. What stopped it? She looked directly at me. Your father. I stared at her. My dad? He wasn't an executive. I know. He wasn't even a director. I know. He was a senior financial analyst. I nodded slowly. He found the problem before I could ask another question. She continued. The acquisition documents have been altered. Someone changed the debt schedules after due diligence. Fraud. Exactly. But everyone believed the documents. My father didn't. Victoria smiled softly. He worked all night to be himself. He checked every number manually. Twice. I could almost picture him doing it. Stacks of paper. Coffee growing cold beside his calculator. He'd always trusted numbers more than people. What happened after he found it? He walked into my office. Victoria laughed quietly. You know what he said? What? Miss Sinclair. She imitated his calm voice surprisingly well. Either I'm completely wrong, or everyone else is. I smiled. That sounds exactly like him. I thought he was arrogant. Were you right? No, she shook her head. He was correct. Every figure, every discrepancy, every hidden liability, he had found them all. That my grandfather canceled the acquisition 12 hours before closing. That close. That close that I slowly leaned back in my seat. He saved the company. Yes. Why didn't anyone know? Because he refused. Recognition. That I laughed in disbelief. That of course he did. Victoria looked at me curiously. You aren't surprised that he hated attention that he told my grandfather. She smiled again. I already get paid. I laughed. He really said that. He did. That it drove my grandfather crazy. The sedan stopped at a traffic light. Neither of us spoke for several moments. Then I asked the obvious question. That if my father saved the company, why is Ryan looking at his personnel file? Victoria's expression grew serious again. Because your father wasn't investigating one fraud, that he was investigating two. That I frowned. What do you mean? The fake acquisition was only the beginning. That he believed someone inside Hamilton Capital had been manipulating financial records for years. That my smile disappeared. That he had proof? He thought he did. What happened? Victoria took a slow breath. He resigned. No, I shook my head immediately. My father didn't resign. That he told me he retired. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. I know. The words hung between us. You mean? She nodded. He lied. To protect you. I stared at her. That my father lied to me. He didn't want you involved. But why? Because before he left, he warned my grandfather. She repeated the words carefully, almost exactly as she'd heard them. The person stealing from Hamilton Capital isn't outside the company. He's already sitting in the boardroom. A chill ran down my spine. The light turned green. The driver pulled forward. My thoughts raced. My father thought there was someone on the board. Yes. Did he know who? No, he had suspicions, but no proof. And then he left. 3 weeks later, Victoria's voice softened. That he suffered a heart attack. That I looked out the window. That I remember that I was in college. My mom wouldn't stop crying. He never talked about work again. Victoria reached across the seat and gently took my hand. That I went to the funeral. That I looked at her in surprise. You were there? At the back. You never spoke to us. That I wasn't there. As Victoria Sinclair. That I came alone. That I tried to remember. There had been dozens of people. Neighbors, former co-workers, friends. That I had been too numb to notice strangers. That I promised myself something that day. What? If I ever discovered who betrayed him, I'd finish what he started. The car became completely silent. That I finally understood. This wasn't just about business. That it never had been. It was personal. For both of us. My phone suddenly vibrated. Liam. I answered. Hey, Ethan. His voice sounded rushed. Where are you? On my way home. Don't come back to the office. That I wasn't planning to. Good. He lowered his voice. Someone broke into your office. That I looked at Victoria. She was already watching me. What happened? They didn't take your laptop. They didn't touch your wallet. They only opened your desk. My heart skipped. The envelope. I don't know. Security locked the floor. But he hesitated. Ryan's been there for the last 40 minutes. I slowly lowered the phone. Victoria already knew the answer before I spoke. He went after the letter. She nodded once. No, he went after something he believed was inside it. What? She looked out the windshield. The truth. My phone buzzed again. This time. It wasn't Liam. It wasn't Victoria. It was an unknown number. .1 text. No greeting. No signature. Just a single sentence. Your father died before he could expose us. You won't get a second chance. I felt every muscle in my body go still. Victoria took the phone from my hand. She read the message once, then looked up at the driver. Turn around. The driver didn't ask why. He immediately changed lanes. I looked at Victoria. Where are we going? Her voice was colder than I had ever heard it. Back to Hamilton Capital. That's after 7. I know. Why? She handed my phone back. Because. Her eyes met mine. Someone just declared war. The sedan cut across 3 lanes without hesitation. The driver never asked questions. He'd worked for the Sinclair family long enough to recognize one thing. When Victoria used that tone, something serious had happened. I looked down at the anonymous text again. Your father died before he could expose us. You won't get a second chance. No emojis. No signatured. No attempt to hide the threat behind vague language. Whoever sent it wanted me to read every word. Victoria extended her hand. Let me see your phone again. I handed it to her. She forwarded the message to Marcus Hill before returning it. Less than 10 seconds later, Marcus replied, tracing now. Don't respond. Victoria locked the screen. They're trying to provoke you. It worked. I know. She reached over and squeezed my hand. But we're not giving them what they wanted. I forced myself to take a slow breath. My father. She interrupted gently. We'll get answers that I've spent 10 years believing he's simply retired. I know. And now someone is using his death to threaten me. I know. Her voice remained calm. Almost too calm that I'd learned long ago that the calmer Victoria sounded, the angrier she actually was. Hamilton Capital looked almost empty when we arrived. Most of the lights were off. Only the executive floor remained illuminated. Marcus was already waiting in the lobby with two members of corporate security, NO Media. He reported, NO Police, not yet. Ryan, Marcus shook his head that he left 23 minutes ago. Victoria frowned. Too convenient that I thought the same. Marcus handed her a tablet. We've already pulled the security footage. He looked at me. Your office wasn't broken into. It wasn't. No, someone used an authorized access card. My stomach tightened. Whose card? Marcus swiped to another screen. The image froze outside my office. The man wearing a baseball cap. His face stayed hidden from every camera that he held a keycard against the reader. The office door unlocked immediately. Can you identify him? Marcus zoomed in. The cap hides his face, but he enlarged the card in the man's hand. It isn't his badge. It belongs to. He stopped. Victoria finished the sentence. Someone inside executive administration. 20 minutes later. The four of us stood inside my office. Nothing looked disturbed. My laptop remained exactly where I'd left it. The framed photo of my parents still sat on the bookshelf. Even the coffee mug on my desk hadn't moved. Marcus walked directly to the desk drawer. The envelope, he pulled it out wearing latex gloves. That's still here. I frowned. Then why open the drawer? Marcus carefully lifted the flap. He looked inside. His expression changed. It's empty. I stared. What? There was another sheet inside there. Wasn't. Marcus looked at me. The adhesive residue says there were originally 2 pages. Victoria turned toward me. You only saw one. I swear that I believe you. Marcus nodded slowly. Which means someone removed the second page. Silence filled the room. Victoria folded her arms. They weren't interested in threatening Ethan. They were looking for information. I looked back at the envelope. What information? Marcus answered quietly. Something they believed your father left behind. Claire arrived 10 minutes later, carrying 3 old archive boxes. I found these in records. She placed them on the conference table. Personnel files? Marcus asked. Claire nodded. Everything related to Daniel Carter. My father. Victoria looked at me. You don't have to do this tonight. I do. She understood immediately, without another word. She opened the first box. Performance reviews, expense reports, old insurance forms, training certificates. Nothing unusual. The second box contained project files dating back almost 15 years. Again, nothing. Then Marcus opened the third box. A small, worn leather notebook slid onto the table. Everyone stopped. Claire looked surprised. That wasn't listed in inventory. Marcus picked it up carefully. NO company labeled NO file number. Victoria looked at me. Do you recognize it? I did. Immediately, that's my father's handwriting. The initials DC were embossed in faded gold on the cover. I reached for it. Marcus stopped me. Gloves. Right? He handed me a pair. Only then did I carefully open the notebook. Most of the pages contained numbers, columns, calculations, account references, exactly what I'd expected from my father. Then, near the middle, the handwriting changed to no longer neat, no longer organized. Instead, there were short sentences, scattered observations, almost like reminders. Someone keeps changing archived figures after audits. Another page. The money isn't disappearing. It's moving. Another. Never trust reports printed after midnight. Compare originals. Marcus leaned closer. This wasn't a diary. Victoria nodded. It was an investigation log. I kept turning pages. Near the back, one sentence had been underlined 3 times. Follow the signatures. Not the money. I read it again. Then again. Victoria looked thoughtful. What does that mean? I slowly closed the notebook. My father once told me something. What? Money can hide. People eventually make mistakes. Marcus looked at me. He followed approvals. Not transactions. I nodded. If someone altered financial records, they'd eventually have to authorize them. Victoria's eyes narrowed. The signatures. I looked at the notebook again. Exactly. Marcus's phone rang. He stepped into the hallway to answer. Claire quietly began photographing every page of the notebook. Victoria remained standing beside me. Neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, your father was closer than I realized. I nodded. He knew. He suspected. No, I looked at the final page. He knew. She followed my gaze. There, written in darker ink than the rest, were 6 words. If I disappear. Start with. The sentence ended abruptly. The rest of the page had been torn away. My pulse quickened. It was the missing page. Marcus returned just as I reached the same conclusion. That he looked at our faces. What happened? I handed him the notebook. That he read the unfinished sentence, then looked at the empty drawer where the envelope had been stored. They weren't looking for a document. That he spoke slowly. They were looking for the page that finished this sentence. Victoria's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen. Her expression hardened. Marcus. Yes? The gala guest list just changed. How? She turned the phone toward us. A new name had been added at the bottom. Special guest. Mason Reed, private security consultant. Marcus frowned. Ryan invited the investigator? Victoria nodded once. No, he invited a witness. She looked at me. He thinks he'll expose us in front of everyone. I closed the notebook. Then let's make sure. He's the one who gets exposed. Victoria smiled. Not the warm smile she reserved for me. The cold, confident smile that had earned her the nickname the Ice Queen. For the first time since this began, I realized something. Ryan believed he was setting a trap. He had no idea. He had just volunteered to walk into ours. The conference room fell silent. N01 reached for the notebook again. N01 spoke. The unfinished sentence lingered in the air. If I disappear. Start with. 1 missing page. 1 missing name. 1 person who had broken into my office to steal it. Marcus finally broke the silence. That we need to assume they already know this notebook exists. Victoria nodded. And that they'll come back if they think we found something. Claire looked between us. Should I transfer the notebook to an off-site vault? Marcus answered before Victoria could. No, Claire frowned. But we're not hiding it. He looked at Victoria. We're using it. Victoria met his eyes. I was about to say the same thing. I looked from one to the other. You want them to think we found the missing page? Marcus smiled. Exactly. They've been reacting to us. It's time they started overreacting. An unexpected visitor at 8:40 p.m. Claire returned. Ms. Sinclair. What is it? Someone's downstairs asking for Ethan. Marcus immediately became alert. Name? He wouldn't give one. What did he say? Claire looked at me. He said, tell Daniel Carter's son that Frank is here. The room became quiet again. I frowned. Frank? The name sounded familiar. Very familiar. Then it hit me. My dad's friend. Victoria turned toward me. The accountant? I nodded. Frank Donovan. He used to come to our house every Thanksgiving. I haven't seen him in almost 10 years. Marcus didn't move. Do you trust him? I stopped. The honest answer was complicated. When I was a kid, absolutely. Now, I honestly don't know. Victoria considered it for a moment. Bring him. Upstairs. Marcus wasn't convinced. I'll have security search him first. 5 minutes later. Frank Donovan walked into the conference room. He looked much older than I remembered. His shoulders were bent. Gray had overtaken most of his hair, but his eyes were exactly the same. Sharp, careful, always calculating. The moment he saw me, he smiled sadly. You look just like your father. I stood. It's been a long time. Too long. He looked around the room. His gaze stopped on Victoria. So, the rumors are true. Victoria raised an eyebrow. What rumors? He smiled faintly. That you're smarter than your grandfather. Victoria didn't answer. Frank looked back at me. I heard someone reopen Daniel's personnel file. I felt my pulse quicken. How? I still have friends here. Marcus stepped forward. Donovan. You haven't answered the question. Frank looked directly at him. I came because Ethan is running out of time. The room became still. What do you mean? I asked. Frank took a deep breath. Your father didn't stop investigating. I know. He found the first name. My heart skipped. What name? Frank shook his head. I don't know. You don't know? He never told me. Then how do you know he found it? Frank slowly reached into the inside pocket of his coat. Marcus instantly blocked him. Easy. Frank froze. It's only a letter. Marcus carefully removed the envelope himself. He checked it, then handed it to me. Across the front, in my father's handwriting, were 4 words, for Ethan. Only Ethan. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My father wrote this. Frank nodded. He gave it to me 2 weeks before he died. And you waited 10 years? His expression filled with regret. He made me promise. What promise? That I'd only give it to you if someone started asking about him again. I looked at Victoria. Neither of us spoke. Slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded page. Unlike the notebook.it wasn't filled with calculations.it was a lettered M, Y father's letter Ethan, if you're reading this. Then someone has finally gone looking for the answers I couldn't finish finding. First, remember one thing: that don't trust anyone simply because they seem honest. That I made that mistake. Second, that if Hamilton Capital is still standing. Then Victoria Sinclair kept her promise. That I stopped reading. That my hands froze. That Victoria's face changed. She stepped closer. You knew, she whispered. My father knew about you. She nodded slowly. He did. That I looked back down. That she's stronger than she believes. If she's still fighting, stand beside her. That she'll need someone she can trust. That I looked up. You knew him much better than you told me. Victoria nodded. He became my mentor during the investigation. Frank quietly added. They trusted each other. That I continued reading. The person I'm looking for isn't the one stealing money. That he's protecting the person who is. Marcus leaned over slightly. That's important. That I kept reading. Follow approvals. Follow signatures. Never follow rumors. The final paragraph was much shorter. Ethan, if you ever reach the point where people begin threatening you.it means you're finally asking the right questions. The letter ended with 2 handwritten words. I'm sorry. Nothing else. No names. No accusations. No solution. Just that I'm sorry. That I folded the letter carefully. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, Frank broke the silence. That he blamed himself. For what? For not finishing. Marcus looked thoughtful. He thought he'd failed. Frank nodded. That he believed he'd left his family in danger. That I slowly shook my head. He didn't fail. Everyone looked at me. That he left us a trail. That I placed the notebook beside the letter. The notebook. The missing page. The signatures. The approvals. That my father wasn't writing random notes. He was building a map. Victoria smiled. And now, we're going to finish it. Marcus's phone buzzed again. He answered immediately. After only a few seconds, his expression hardened. What? Victoria asked. Marcus lowered the phone. Our cyber team just recovered the deleted access logs. And Marcus looked directly at me. The executive key card used to enter your office was cloned at Silence.so, whose original card was copied. Marcus inhaled slowly. The CEO's every eye in the room turned toward Victoria for the first time since this investigation began. Someone wasn't trying to frame me. Someone was trying to frame my wife. The silence after Marcus's announcement lasted only a few seconds. It felt much longer. No one in the conference room looked away from Victoria. Marcus broke the silence first. The clone credential wasn't copied from a random executive. He placed the tablet on the conference table. The IT was copied from the CEO's master access card. Claire frowned. That's impossible. Marcus looked at her calmly. No, it's difficult. Not impossible. Victoria remained perfectly still. Explain. Marcus enlarged the security report. Our access cards use encrypted RFID chips. Copying one requires physical proximity, usually less than 5 seconds. I looked at Victoria. When could someone have gotten close enough? She thought for a moment. Board meetings, investor conferences, airport security, charity events. She slowly shook her head. Too many opportunities. Marcus nodded. Exactly. The clone could have been made months ago. Frank folded his arms. So someone has been planning this for quite a while. Yes. Marcus tapped another page. But that's not the interesting part. He zoomed into a timeline. The clone card wasn't used until 3 nights ago. Victoria stepped closer. Meaning? The person who copied your credentials waited. They didn't act immediately. They acted only after Ethan received the anonymous envelope. The room fell silent again. I looked down at the notebook lying beside my father's letter. They knew. Victoria turned toward me. They knew someone was about to reopen your father's investigation. A pattern hidden in plain sight. Marcus opened another file. I spent the last hour reviewing archived access logs. You asked me to look for patterns. I found one. He projected the timeline onto the large conference screen. Rows of dates filled the display. Most meant nothing to me. Marcus pointed to 7 specific entries. Every one of these nights, someone entered executive records after midnight. Claire frowned. That's impossible. The archive floor is locked. IT is now. Marcus looked at her. IT wasn't 10 years ago. Frank slowly approached the screen. How far back do these entries go? Marcus answered quietly. 11 years. I exchanged a glance with Victoria. My father started investigating 12 years ago. Marcus nodded. The late-night archive visits began 1 year later. Frank's expression darkened. After Daniel started asking questions. Someone started rewriting history. One argued. Because no one could. The timeline was too consistent. month after month, year after year. Someone had accessed archived financial records long after the original audits were completed, exactly as my father's notebook had described. Never trust reports printed after midnight. Compare originals for the first time. That sentence made perfect sense. Ryan makes his move. Claire's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen, then looked directly at Victoria. That it's Ryan. Victoria didn't hesitate. Put him through. Claire pressed speaker. Ryan's familiar voice filled the room. Good evening. Victoria, Ryan. I hope I'm not interrupting. He laughed politely. I'll be brief. What do you need? I wanted to discuss next week's gala. Victoria remained expressionless. What about it? I've invited someone. I saw. Mason Reed. Yes, I think he'll make the evening. Interesting that Victoria's tone never changed. I'm sure he will. Ryan continued. He recently completed an investigation. I've heard. And his conclusions surprised me. I imagine they did. Ryan chuckled. I think you'll be surprised too. He paused just long enough to let the words settle. I finally know who Ethan Carter's wife is. N01 in the room moved. Victoria answered without missing a beat. Congratulations. Ryan laughed again. You don't sound curious. I've learned curiosity can be expensive. Very true. I'll see you Friday. The call ended. Marcus looked at Victoria. He believes it. He does. Frank frowned. Shouldn't we stop him? Victoria slowly shook her head. No, why not? Because the more certain Ryan becomes, the less carefully he'll think. The hidden ledger. Marcus turned back to the archive boxes. We're still missing something. I looked at the scattered files. The missing notebook page. Yes, but I don't think that's all. Frank suddenly snapped his fingers. The ledger. Everyone looked at him. What ledger? I asked. Frank rubbed his forehead. Daniel mentioned it once. When? A week before he died. What did he say? Frank closed his eyes. Trying to remember, he told me. If anything happens, the notebook won't matter without the ledger. Victoria stepped forward. What ledger? He never explained. He only said. Frank looked directly at me. Someone hid the original approvals before the copies were altered. Marcus immediately understood. The originals. I nodded slowly. If my father was comparing signatures, he needed unedited documents. Victoria's eyes narrowed. So somewhere, the original approval ledger still exists. Marcus smiled for the first time that evening. And if we find it, we won't need guesses anymore. We'll have proof. Before anyone could respond, Claire's tablet chimed. She looked down. Her face lost all color. A mess. Sinclair, what is it? Claire swallowed. The storage company just called. What about? The off-site archive warehouse. She looked from Victoria to me. Caught fire 20 minutes ago. The room froze. Marcus was already reaching for his phone. Victoria spoke only 4 words. Tell me it's contained. Claire looked back at the message. Her voice was barely above a whisper. It started. In the records section. Marcus was already moving before Claire finished speaking. Get me the warehouse manager. Claire nodded. Immediately. I'm trying. She dialed while Marcus grabbed his jacket. Victoria remained calm. Almost unnaturally calm. Only I noticed the tiny change. She had stopped blinking. That always happened when she was putting together pieces faster than everyone else. She looked at Marcus. How long? If traffic cooperates. 20 minutes. Too long. Marcus understood immediately. You think it wasn't an accident? Victoria looked directly at him. I don't believe in coincidences. Someone wanted the records gone. We left the conference room together. Frank stayed behind with Claire, organizing my father's notebook and letter before I reached the elevator. Frank called after me. Ethan. I turned. Your father once told me something. What? When people destroy evidence, it usually means they missed something. I nodded. I'll remember that. The drive to the warehouse felt much shorter than 20 minutes. Nobody spoke. Marcus monitored security's radio. Victoria answered 3 calls from the board without revealing where she was. I watched the city lights slide past the window. My father's words echoed in my mind. Follow the signatures, not the money, not the rumors, the signatures. Whoever had threatened me, whoever had stolen the missing notebook page, whoever had set the warehouse on fire, they all wanted the same thing. Erase the past. The fire was too perfect. The warehouse was surrounded by emergency vehicles. Firefighters were still spraying water onto one corner of the building. The flames were almost out. Marcus flashed his credentials and led us through the security perimeter. The warehouse manager hurried toward us. His face was covered with soot. Ms. Sinclair. What happened? We don't know yet. Marcus interrupted. Start from the beginning. The manager nodded. There was no fire alarm. Victoria frowned. No alarm. It never activated. Marcus and I exchanged a glance. Power failure? I asked. The manager shook his head. No, the alarm cables were cut. Marcus's expression hardened. Oh, someone disabled the system first. The manager nodded slowly. Then the sprinkler valves were closed manually. Victoria folded her arms, which means the fire wasn't the first crime. Marcus finished the sentence. It was the last one. What survived? A fire captain approached us carrying a black plastic container. Who's in charge? Victoria stepped forward. I am. The captain opened the container. Most paper records are gone. I figured. But he pulled out a thick metal storage case. This survived. Marcus looked surprised. A fireproof archive box. The captain nodded. It was inside the hottest part of the building. Victoria asked, "Can you open it?" The captain handed Marcus a cutting tool. The lock melted. Marcus carefully pried the lid open. Steam drifted into the cold night air. Inside, point 3 binders, point 2 hard drives, point 1 sealed envelope. N01 spoke. Marcus lifted the envelope first. The outside label read, "Executive Approval. Ledger, originals." Every eye in the group fixed on the envelope. Frank had been right. The ledger existed. Victoria slowly exhaled. They missed it. Marcus smiled. Or, they never knew where it was. A missing binder back at the temporary command station. Marcus began checking the contents. Binder 1. Financial approvals from 11 years ago. Binder 2. Executive authorization logs. The third slot inside the case was empty. Marcus frowned. There should be another binder. The warehouse manager looked confused. I've never opened that box. Marcus turned it over. The foam lining had a perfect rectangular impression. Something had been removed recently. Victoria looked at the manager. When was this box last inventoried? He checked his tablet. 3 weeks ago, and it listed 3 binders. Marcus looked up. S01 disappeared before tonight. Victoria's eyes narrowed. The fire wasn't to steal IT. It was to hide the fact that it had already been stolen. I felt a chill run down my spine. Whoever was behind this had planned every move carefully. First, steal 1 binder, then destroy the warehouse. Everyone would assume the missing evidence had burned. N01 would think it had vanished beforehand. Marcus closed the metal case. They're always one step ahead. Victoria looked at him. No, she shook her head. They were. She held up the sealed envelope containing the original approval ledger. They've just realized. They failed. A new discovery as the forensic team photographed the contents. Marcus plugged one of the recovered hard drives into a secure laptop. The screen flickered. Then a list of folders appeared. Most had ordinary names. Audits, legal contracts. Then one folder caught my attention. IT wasn't labeled with a project or a department. IT was simply called Laughing Face. See. Marcus clicked it. Only one file was inside. A scanned PDF. The document opened. Across the top was my father's signature. Beneath it, 3 additional signatures. The first belonged to Charles Sinclair. The second belonged to Hamilton Capital's former chief financial officer. The third had been digitally blacked out. Marcus stared at the screen. Someone intentionally censored this. Victoria leaned closer. Can it be recovered? Marcus nodded slowly. If they only covered it. Probably. He looked at me. It'll take a few hours before anyone could speak. Victoria's phone vibrated. She glanced at the caller ID. Ryan Mitchell. She answered. Ryan. His voice was unusually cheerful. I just heard about the warehouse. So did I. What a terrible accident. Victoria's eyes never left the laptop screen. Why, yes, IT would be unfortunate if important records had been destroyed. She answered calmly. They weren't. There was a pause. The first genuine pause I'd ever heard from Ryan. Then he laughed. I'm relieved. So, am I? She ended the call without another word. Marcus slowly smiled. He didn't know. Victoria nodded. No, and now he does. She looked back at the recovered ledger. For the first time. He knows we're holding something he desperately wants. Ryan's phone call lasted less than 30 seconds. IT told Victoria everything she needed to know. The warehouse fire hadn't been random. IT hadn't even been a desperate attempt to destroy evidence. IT had been a confirmation mission. Ryan wanted to know one thing. Did we recover anything? The moment Victoria answered. They weren't. She had intentionally changed the game. Now Ryan knew we had evidence. He just didn't know which evidence. And uncertainty was far more dangerous than certainty. Back to headquarters by the time we returned to Hamilton Capital. It was nearly midnight. Marcus had already converted one of the executive conference rooms into a temporary investigation center. Point three large displays covered the wall. Point one showed the archive timeline. Another displayed my father's notebook page by page. The third was reserved for the recovered documents. Claire walked in carrying fresh coffee that I figured nobody was going home tonight. Marcus accepted a cup without looking away from his laptop. You figured correctly. Victoria looked at me. You should get some sleep. That I shook my head. My father spent years on this. That I'm staying. She studied me for a second before nodding. That I expected that answer. Recovering the hidden signature. Marcus connected the recovered PDF to forensic software. The third signature remained hidden beneath a thick black rectangle. IT wasn't encrypted. Marcus explained that IT was digitally redacted, which means, I asked if whoever did this simply covered the signature instead of deleting it. The original image data may still exist. Claire leaned forward. Can we recover it? Marcus smiled faintly. Let's find out. That he typed rapidly. The room fell completely silent except for the sound of his keyboard. Point 1 minute. Point 2.5. That a progress bar slowly filled across the screen. That 94%. 98.100. The black rectangle flickered, then disappeared. Everyone leaned forward. The signature underneath appeared. Not completely. Only about 80% remained. But it was enough to read the surname. Whitmore. Marcus froze. Claire frowned. That I don't recognize that name. Victoria did. Her face became unreadable. That I do. That I turned toward her. Who is Whitmore? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the window. My grandfather had a legal advisor. He retired 11 years ago. His name. She slowly turned back toward us. Was Richard Whitmore. Frank looked genuinely confused. The attorney? Victoria nodded. He approved every major acquisition. Marcus looked back at the document. This file carries 4 signatures. Charles Sinclair, the CFO, Daniel Carter, and Richard Whitmore. I frowned. Why hide his name? Marcus answered quietly. Because someone wanted history to forget he was involved. Marcus immediately searched the company archive. Richard Whitmore's personnel record appeared. Employment end date. March 14th. 11 years ago. I compared the date to the document. Something didn't fit. This approval. I pointed at the screen. Is dated April 2. Marcus looked twice. Then a third time. He slowly nodded. You're right. Victoria stepped closer. What? He signed this document. Marcus looked directly at her. 19 days after he officially retired. Nobody spoke. Frank finally whispered, That's impossible. Marcus shook his head. Number one of 2 things happened. He didn't actually retire, or someone forged his signature. Victoria looked thoughtful. There's a third possibility. Everyone turned toward her. He retired publicly, but stayed on privately. Marcus considered it possible. But why hide it? Victoria answered almost immediately. Because whatever happened after his retirement was never supposed to become part of the official record. An old photograph. Claire suddenly remembered something. Wait. She hurried to one of the archive boxes. I found an old company photo earlier. She spread it across the conference table. IT showed dozens of executives gathered for the annual leadership retreat. The picture had been taken 12 years ago. Marcus enlarged it on the screen. There, Victoria pointed. That's Richard Whitmore. An older man stood beside Charles Sinclair. Gray suit. Thin smile. Sharp eyes. Then I noticed something else. Standing 2 rows behind them. My father. Holding a folder, looking directly toward Whitmore, almost as if he had been watching him. Marcus zoomed further. What is Daniel holding? The image became grainy, but one word could still be read on the folder. Approvals. Frank stared at the screen. Oh my God. Victoria looked at him. What? Frank swallowed. I remember that meeting. Everyone turned toward him. Daniel called me afterward. What did he say? Frank closed his eyes. Searching his memory, he told me. If Whitmore signs one more document. He stopped. Marcus leaned forward. What? Frank looked at me. That I'll finally know who he's protecting. The room went completely silent. Whitmore wasn't necessarily the mastermind. According to my father, he had been protecting someone else. The same conclusion my father's letter hinted at years later. The person I'm looking for isn't the one stealing money. He's protecting the person who is. The pieces were beginning to fit, but the center of the puzzle was still missing. A midnight visitor just after 1 o'clock in the morning. Marcus's radio crackled. Sir, what is it? There's someone downstairs asking for Ms. Sinclair. Marcus frowned. At 1 in the morning. Yes. Name? The security officer hesitated. He refused. Victoria looked up. What did he say? The voice came through the radio that he said, "Tell Victoria that Richard Whitmore isn't dead." Every person in the room froze. That Victoria's eyes widened for the first time all night. Frank took an involuntary step backward. Marcus reached for his jacket. "Keep him there." The guard answered immediately, "We can't." Marcus frowned. "Why not? He already left." The radio crackled again, but that he left an envelope. Marcus looked at Victoria. "I'll get it." "No," she stood. "We'll all go." Something deep inside me said this wasn't a coincidence. If Richard Whitmore was alive, then someone had just reopened a chapter of history that had been buried for more than a decade. And whoever delivered that message wanted us to find him before someone else did. By the time we reached the lobby, the security officer was still standing beside the reception desk. The plain brown envelope rested on the polished marble counter. "No cameras caught him?" Marcus asked. The officer shook his head. He wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. "Vehicle? No plate." "He was dropped off by a taxi." Marcus frowned at "So he planned this." The officer nodded. "He was inside for less than 20 seconds. He only said one sentence." Marcus glanced at Victoria and left the envelope. "No return address." Marcus examined the envelope before opening it. "No fingerprints. No postage. No return address." Only 4 typed words on the front. "For Victoria Sinclair." Marcus carefully sliced the seal. Inside were 3 items: a hotel key card, a folded note, a faded business card. Victoria picked up the business card first. The printing had almost disappeared with age. "Richard Whitmore, Senior Legal Counsel, Hamilton Capital." Claire stared at "So he really existed." Frank gave a short, humorless laugh. "Not only did he exist, he practically ran the legal department." Marcus unfolded the handwritten note. The message contained only 2 lines: "If you want the truth, come alone. Room 1817. Midnight tomorrow." No signatured. No hotel name. Marcus immediately turned over the key card, embossed in silver lettering. "The Grand Astoria Hotel." No one spoke. Finally Marcus said, "It's a trap." Victoria nodded. "I know." Frank looked uneasy. "Then we don't go." Victoria looked at him. "We absolutely go." The final clue from the ledger before anyone could argue. Claire called from the conference table. "Wait." She was still flipping through the recovered approval ledger. "I think I found something." Everyone gathered around. Claire pointed to one approval page dated 11 years earlier. 4 executive signatures appeared across the bottom. "Charles Sinclair, Richard Whitmore, the chief financial officer." Then a 4th signature. Marcus leaned closer. "This isn't Daniel Carter. It isn't." Victoria frowned. "The name is barely readable." Marcus enlarged the image. Only 3 letters became clear. R. M. Frank slowly inhaled. "No." Marcus looked at him. "What?" Frank's face had gone pale. "I've seen that signature before." "Where?" He swallowed. "On Ryan Mitchell's internship paperwork." The room became completely silent. I stared at him. "Ryan worked here 11 years ago." Frank nodded. "He was a legal intern." Victoria's expression hardened. "He never told me that." Marcus immediately opened Ryan's personnel file. Employment history. Legal intern. 11 years ago. Promotion. Associate counsel. Corporate strategy. Executive vice president. The timeline unfolded across the screen. Ryan hadn't joined the company recently. He had grown up inside it. Marcus looked from the ledger to Ryan's personnel record. The dates overlap. Victoria quietly finished the thought that he worked directly under Richard Whitmore. The missing connection. I looked back at my father's notebook. One sentence suddenly stood out. "Follow the signatures." Not the money. Not because the signatures proved guilt. Because they revealed relationships. Who approved whose work. Who trusted whom. Who covered for whom. Marcus nodded slowly. "I think your father wasn't chasing financial fraud. He was mapping influence." Frank looked at me. "Exactly. Money changes accounts. Power changes hands." Victoria folded her arms. "And signatures leave a trail." Everything suddenly felt connected. Whitmore. Ryan. My father. The missing page. The warehouse fire. Someone hadn't just hidden stolen money. Someone had protected a network. A network that might still exist inside Hamilton Capital. Marcus broke the silence. "I still don't like the hotel meeting." "You won't," Victoria answered calmly. "But we're going." Marcus looked at her. "Not alone. The note specifically says." "I don't care what the note says." Marcus rarely interrupted Victoria. This time he did. "If Whitmore is alive, he may be the only witness we have left. If this is a setup, they'll expect you to walk in unprotected." Victoria considered that for several seconds. Then she looked at me. What do you think? I met her eyes that if they're expecting the CEO, let them prepare for the CEO. She waited that I continued. They're not expecting your husband. A faint smile appeared. The first good surprise we've had all week. Marcus immediately understood that you'll switch places. Victoria nodded once. Not identities, positions. Marcus smiled that I can work with that. A new target just as everyone began discussing the security plan. Marcus's secure phone vibrated. He answered. His expression changed almost immediately. What? Victoria asked. Marcus lowered the phone slowly. Our cyber team finished tracing the anonymous text Ethan received. Where did it come from? Marcus looked directly at me. It bounced through 6 countries. Expected, but the final relay. He paused. Originated from inside Hamilton Capital. The room went silent. Marcus continued. The message wasn't sent by an outsider. It was sent from someone using our own internal network. Claire whispered that so. They're still here. Victoria looked around the empty executive floor through the glass walls. Hundreds of offices, thousands of employees. Somewhere in the building, someone had threatened my family. Someone had stolen my father's investigation. Someone had tried to erase 11 years of history. And that person still had an employee badge. Victoria slowly closed the approval ledger. Her voice became calm again. The gala is in 3 days. Marcus nodded. Yes, they think they'll expose us. She looked at me. They're wrong. I smiled. For the first time. We're going to expose them. Outside the conference room. The city lights reflected against the dark glass. Inside. Every piece on the board had finally begun to move. Ryan believed he was controlling the game. Richard Whitmore had suddenly returned from the dead. That my father's final investigation was no longer buried. And somewhere inside Hamilton Capital, the real enemy had just realized something terrifying. That we were no longer reacting. That we were hunting. The meeting broke up just after 2 in the morning. Nobody went home because they felt safe. They went home because Marcus insisted that exhausted people made careless mistakes before leaving the conference room. He locked my father's notebook, the approval ledger, and the recovered hard drives inside a biometric safe that had been brought in from corporate security. Only 4 people knew the access code. Marcus, Victoria, Claire, and me. If this safe is opened before tomorrow morning. Marcus said, I'll know. You trust technology that much? I asked. I trust people even less. Frank gave a tired laugh. My generation said the same thing. Marcus didn't smile. I wasn't joking. Victoria and I rode the elevator down together, for the first time in days. We were completely alone. Neither of us spoke until the doors opened into the underground garage. She stopped walking. You've been quiet. I've been thinking about your father, about everything. She nodded. I should have told you years ago. You promised him. I did. But I also promised myself that I'd never lie to you. You didn't. I hid part of the truth. That's different. She looked at me carefully. You aren't angry. I am. Her expression changed. Not at you. I reached for her hand. I'm angry that my father spent his last years carrying this alone. She intertwined her fingers with mine. SOMI. For a few seconds. Hamilton Capital disappeared. There was no board. No investigation. No Ryan Mitchell. Just the woman I'd fallen in love with, I said, this isn't exactly how I pictured our marriage. She laughed softly. What did you picture? I don't know. Vacation. Normal arguments. You stealing my fries. I do not steal your fries. You absolutely do. I redistribute them. That's theft with better marketing. She rolled her eyes. You're impossible. And yet you married me. I've questioned that decision several times. But never seriously. She smiled. Never seriously. Someone was watching. The garage was almost empty. Marcus had insisted that another security team sweep the building before either of us left. As we approached our cars, Victoria stopped abruptly. What? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the far corner of the garage. A maintenance cart stood beside a concrete pillar. Nothing unusual, except the cart wasn't there earlier. She said quietly. I followed her gaze. You're sure? I noticed details. Marcus's voice suddenly crackled through the earpiece he'd insisted I wear. Ethan, I don't move. I froze. What is it? We've got motion. Where? Behind the maintenance cart. Victoria's expression remained perfectly calm, without looking at me. She whispered, 0.3 seconds. What happens in 3 seconds? You run toward the elevator. I'm not leaving you. You'll only slow me down. I don't believe that. She almost smiled. You've learned something. Marcus interrupted again. Now 2 security officers emerged from opposite sides of the garage. The maintenance cart tipped over. A man dressed in dark clothing sprinted toward the emergency exit. Stop. One officer gave chase. The second blocked the exit. The man changed direction immediately, straight toward us. Victoria didn't hesitate. She stepped in front of me. I grabbed her arm. No, before either of us could move. Marcus appeared from behind a parked SUV and tackled the man to the ground. The struggle lasted less than 10 seconds. Plastic zip ties clicked into place. The intruder never spoke, not once. Marcus searched him quickly. No weapon. He reached into the man's jacket. Disposable phone. Another pocket. Lockpicks. Then, Marcus frowned. He slowly removed a hotel key card. The Grand Astoria. Room 1817. The same room listed in the anonymous note. Victoria looked at Marcus. He wasn't coming to kill us. Marcus nodded. He was making sure we'd come. Interrogation 20 minutes later. The man sat handcuffed inside a corporate security interview room. He refused to answer every question. Marcus placed the hotel key card on the table. You dropped this. Silence. You've been following Ethan Carter. Silence. You broke into his office. Nothing. Marcus looked at me. Your turn. I pulled out the chair opposite the man. He looked to be in his early 30s. Clean-shaven. Athletic build. No obvious tattoos. Professional. You work for Ryan? No response. For Whitmore? Nothing. I leaned forward. You don't know who Whitmore really is. For the first time, his eyes moved. Just slightly. Enough for me to notice. Marcus noticed too. Interesting. I tried again. You've never met him. Silence. But someone told you to deliver that key card. His jaw tightened. I smiled faintly. There it is. Marcus folded his arms. He reacts when we mention Whitmore. Victoria stepped closer to the table. Not because he knows Whitmore. She looked directly at the man. But because whoever hired you never told you the whole story. His breathing changed. Barely. But enough. Victoria had found the crack. The first mistake. Marcus slid a printed photograph across the table. It was the surveillance image from the warehouse. You've been busy. The man looked down instinctively. Another mistake. Marcus calmly spoke. You recognized the warehouse. Silence again. But it no longer mattered. The reactions were becoming a language of their own. Victoria looked at Marcus. Run facial recognition. We already did. And Marcus's expression remained unreadable. No match. What? The face. He looked back at the suspect. Doesn't exist. I frowned. What does that mean? Marcus tapped the file. Driver's license. Passport. Employment records. Military. Nothing. Claire, who had just entered with a laptop, quietly added, It's like someone built him yesterday. The room fell silent. Professional operatives weren't unusual in corporate espionage. But a man with no digital history at all? That was different. Very different. The suspect finally spoke. Just one sentence. His voice was calm. You've already lost. Marcus leaned forward. Explain. The man smiled for the first time. You think. The meeting tomorrow is the trap. He looked directly at Victoria. It isn't. Then he leaned back in his chair. You've been looking at the wrong room. Every instinct. I had screamed that he wanted us to chase another distraction. But something in the way he said it made me think he believed it. Marcus looked toward Victoria. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slowly picked up the hotel key card again. Room 1817. Then she looked at the suspect. What room should we be looking at? He smiled wider. You'll find out when you're too late. The interview room fell silent once more. Outside the glass, dawn was beginning to break over Manhattan. For the first time since my father's notebook had resurfaced, it felt like we weren't uncovering the conspiracy. We were walking exactly where someone wanted us to walk. And that meant only one thing. The real game had finally begun. Marcus didn't ask another question. He simply stood. We're done. The suspect laughed. You don't even want to know my name? Marcus looked at him without expression. If you wanted us to know your name, you would have given us a real one. The smile faded. For the first time since the interrogation began, the man looked genuinely disappointed. Marcus nodded toward the security officers outside. Transfer him to holding room 3. The officers escorted him away. The man stopped at the doorway. Without turning around, he said, Tell Ethan Carter one thing. Everyone froze. Marcus answered, I'm listening. The man slowly looked over his shoulder. Your father trusted the wrong person. Then he walked away. The heavy steel door slammed shut, breaking the pattern. No one spoke until the footsteps disappeared. Claire was the first to break the silence. Oh, you think he was bluffing? Marcus shook his head. No, but he wasn't telling the whole truth either. Victoria folded her arms that he wanted us to focus on Daniel that I looked toward the closed door that he specifically mentioned my father. Exactly. She turned toward the evidence board. He didn't mention the ledger. He didn't mention Whitmore. He didn't mention Ryan. Marcus understood immediately. He was steering the conversation. Victoria nodded. Professional operatives rarely lie. They redirect. Frank leaned against the conference table. So if he wants us looking backward, we should be looking forward. Marcus smiled faintly. I like that. The hotel doesn't matter. Marcus projected the floor plan of the Grand Astoria Hotel onto the main screen. Room 1817 flashed in blue. So Claire asked that we still send a team. Marcus looked at Victoria. She nodded once, but not to the room. Claire frowned. What? Victoria walked toward the display. That if someone wanted to kill me, they wouldn't send me the room number. They'd simply wait. She pointed at the lobby. The key card is bait. Marcus added, they're expecting us to surround room 1817 to every camera, every hallway, every elevator. I finally understood, so nobody will be watching. The rest of the hotel, Marcus smiled. Exactly. He zoomed out. The Grand Astoria occupied an entire city block. Point 3 entrances. A rooftop helipad. Underground parking. Point 2 connected office towers. Point 1 private conference center. Victoria looked at the blueprint. This building wasn't chosen because of the room. It was chosen because it's impossible to monitor completely. Frank quietly asked where do we actually go? Victoria answered without hesitation. The conference center. Claire finds the missing piece while Marcus coordinated security teams. Claire remained in front of her laptop. She had been comparing old executive calendars with the recovered approval ledger. Suddenly, she stopped typing. Wait. Nobody looked up immediately. She spoke louder. I found something. Marcus turned first. What? Claire enlarged 2 documents side by side. The approval ledger and Richard Whitmore's calendar. So? The dates match. Marcus nodded. They should. No. Claire pointed to one entry. Look closer. The calendar showed a private meeting. Location, Grand Astoria Hotel. Date, 11 years ago, the exact same week as the approval document my father had signed. Frank slowly inhaled. He met someone there. Victoria narrowed her eyes. Who? Claire highlighted the attendee list. Most names had been deleted. Only one remained visible. Special advisor. No name. No title. Just those 2 words. Marcus looked thoughtful. Anonymous. Victoria shook her head. No. She looked at me. Protected. Ryan walks into the trap just after sunrise. Marcus's secure phone rang. He answered. Only listened. Then smiled. When he hung up, he looked at Victoria. Ryan just requested an emergency board meeting. Victoria wasn't surprised. When? 9 o'clock. Reason? He claims he is evidence of executive misconduct. Claire rolled her eyes. Already? Marcus nodded. That he wants the board to act before the gala. I looked at Victoria. He's accelerating. He has to. Why? She walked toward the window, overlooking Midtown. Because he thinks we're about to expose him. But we don't have proof. That we have something more dangerous. I frowned. What? She turned toward me. Uncertainty. Ryan doesn't know what survived the warehouse fire. He doesn't know what your father left behind. He doesn't know what Whitmore may have told us. Marcus finished the thought. So he'll make mistakes trying to protect himself. Husband and wife. The conference room gradually emptied as everyone prepared for the day ahead. For the first time in nearly 12 hours, Victoria and I were alone. She loosened the collar of her blouse and sat on the edge of the conference table. You should sleep. So should you. She smiled. I'm terrible at taking my own advice. I've noticed. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly asked, are you afraid? I considered the question honestly. Yes. Of Ryan? No. Of whoever's behind him? No. She looked puzzled. Then what? I walked closer. I'm afraid that after all this is over, you'll decide life was simpler before you married me. She stared at me in disbelief, then laughed. Actually laughed. Ethan, what? Do you remember our wedding vows? Every word. You promised to stand beside me. When life became complicated. I did. She stepped close enough to straighten my tie, just as she always did when we were alone. And I promised that no boardroom, no fortune, and no family name would ever come before you. She rested her forehead lightly against mine. That I haven't changed my mind. That I haven't either. For one quiet moment, the investigation disappeared. There was no conspiracy. No hidden signatures. No anonymous threats. Only a husband and wife reminding each other why they were still fighting. The last message before the storm. Marcus opened the conference room door without knocking. Sorry. Victoria stepped back immediately. What is it? Marcus's expression had become serious again. The cyber team recovered something. What? They decrypted the deleted metadata from the approval ledger. Claire hurried in behind him, carrying a printed report. IT wasn't just edited, IT was edited twice. Marcus placed the report on the table. The first edit happened 11 years ago. The second, he looked directly at me, happened 3 days ago. The room went silent. 3 days ago. The exact day Ryan hired Mason Reed. The exact day my office was searched. The exact day the anonymous envelope appeared. Someone inside Hamilton Capital hadn't simply discovered my father's investigation. They had been monitoring it in real time. Marcus pointed to the final line of the forensic report. Last authenticated user. Administrator account. Executive archives no. Employee name.no badge number. Only an administrator credential that should have been impossible to access. Victoria slowly folded the report. The board meeting is in 1 hour. Marcus nodded. And she looked around the room. For 11 years, they've been hiding behind old records. She met my eyes. Today, we make them face us. Outside, Manhattan was waking to another ordinary business morning. Inside Hamilton Capital, nothing would ever be ordinary again. The board believed it was gathering to discuss executive misconduct. Ryan believed he was about to corner the CEO. Neither side realized the truth. The investigation had entered a new phase. No one was hunting ghosts anymore. Now they were hunting someone who was still sitting in the boardroom at exactly 8:55 a.m. I stepped out of the executive elevator. The atmosphere on the 42nd floor felt different, not tense, controlled, too controlled. People weren't talking, they were watching. Assistants hurried through the corridor carrying binders thick enough to stop a bullet. Junior executives stood near the conference room pretending to check emails while stealing glances toward the boardroom doors. Word had spread. Nobody knew the details. Everybody knew something was happening. Claire met me halfway down the hall. Good. You made it. That I was only 5 minutes away. I know. She lowered her voice. The directors started arriving early. Ryan? Already inside. Victoria? Claire smiled faintly. Still making him wait. That sounded exactly like my wife. If Ryan wanted urgency, Victoria would answer with patience. She believed the first person to lose control usually lost the negotiation. IT was one of the first lessons she'd ever taught me. Marcus emerged from another hallway carrying a slim black tablet. You'll want this. What is it? A seating chart. I frowned. For the board meeting. He nodded. I rearranged it. Why? Marcus zoomed in. Look carefully. Ryan's name sat halfway down one side of the table. Across from him, an empty chair. Who's supposed to sit there? Marcus looked at me. You. I stared. Not on the board. No, but Victoria requested your attendance today. Yes, what? He smiled. Project advisor. I laughed. Ryan's going to love that. He isn't. Marcus's smile widened slightly. That's why she did IT at the T precisely 9 o'clock. The doors opened. Every director stood as Victoria Sinclair entered. She didn't rush. She never rushed. Her charcoal suit was immaculate, her expression unreadable. She acknowledged the room with a single nod before taking her seat at the head of the table. Good morning. The directors answered almost in unison. Good morning. Ryan remained seated. He waited until everyone else settled before speaking. Thank you for calling this emergency session. Victoria looked at him calmly. You requested it. I did. Then you have the floor. Ryan stood. He pressed a remote. The large display behind him lit up. Across the screen appeared one title. Executive Conduct Review. Every eye in the room turned toward him. Ryan smiled. Members of the board. Today I'd like to discuss a matter involving conflicts of interest, misuse of executive authority, and potential violations of corporate governance. N01 interrupted. He enjoyed the silence. He always had. Ryan clicked to the next slide. A photograph appeared. IT showed me entering my apartment building. 5 minutes later, Olivia Bennett entered through the same doors. I almost laughed. Ryan didn't notice. Ladies and gentlemen, our senior project director, Ethan Carter, has intentionally concealed his marital status from Hamilton Capital. Several directors exchanged confused looks. One elderly board member adjusted his glasses. Is that against company policy? Ryan smiled politely. Not by itself. He clicked again. Another photographed at me carrying Olivia's portfolio into the elevator. Then another. Leaving the same grocery store. Then another. A charity event. The slideshow continued. I counted 12 photographs. Each one looked convincing. Until you knew the truth. Ryan folded his hands. My investigator has spent several weeks documenting this relationship. He looked toward me. Mr. Carter, would you like to explain why you've repeatedly hidden your spouse from this company? The room turned toward me. Victoria remained completely silent. She wasn't going to rescue me. That wasn't our agreement. I stood slowly. Certainly. Ryan looked pleased. Please do. I glanced at the photographs. Then back at the board. The woman in these pictures. I paused. Isn't my wife. Silence. Ryan smiled. I expected that answer. I imagine you did. He stepped closer. My investigator identified her. So did mine. That made him hesitate. Only slightly. You investigated my investigation? No, I smiled. My wife did, for the first time. Victoria looked down. She hid it well, but I knew she was suppressing a smile. Ryan laughed. So we're blaming your mysterious wife now? No, I'm complimenting her. The room remained silent. Ryan clicked another slide. My investigator is prepared to testify. The doors opened. Mason Reed walked into the boardroom, confident, well-dressed, professional. He carried a leather folder under one arm. Ryan gestured toward him. Mr. Reed, please tell the board what you discovered. Mason nodded. I conducted surveillance on Mr. Carter for 21 days. I documented repeated contact with Olivia Bennett. I concluded, with reasonable certainty, that she is his spouse. Ryan looked almost triumphant. Then Victoria spoke for the first time. Reasonable certainty? Mason turned toward her. Yes. Victoria leaned back in her chair. Mr. Reed, have you ever met Ethan Carter's wife? He hesitated. No. So your conclusion is based entirely on observation. Correct. Victoria nodded once. Interesting. She reached beneath the conference table, then placed a thin blue folder in front of Mason. Would you open that? Mason frowned. What is it? Evidence. He slowly opened the folder. Inside were 3 certified documents. A marriage license. A passport. A notarized affidavit. His expression changed immediately. Ryan noticed. What is it? Mason didn't answer. He simply stared at the first page. Victoria spoke calmly. Would you please read the marriage certificate aloud? Mason swallowed. His voice had lost its confidence. It states that Ethan Carter has been legally married for 2 years. Ryan smiled. Exactly. Mason looked up. No, he turned another page. This certificate doesn't list Olivia Bennett. The room became completely silent. Ryan's smile disappeared. Very slowly, he looked at Mason. What are you talking about? Mason looked from the documents to Victoria, then finally to me. His face had gone pale. He whispered, My investigation identified the wrong woman. The first crack had finally appeared in Ryan Mitchell's perfect plan. Mason's words landed like a stone dropped into still water for several seconds. Nobody spoke. Ryan looked from Mason to the documents in disbelief. What do you mean? He said quietly. The wrong woman? Mason swallowed. The surveillance was accurate. The conclusion wasn't. Ryan's expression hardened. Explain. Mason lifted the marriage certificate with both hands. The woman I followed isn't listed anywhere in these records. Victoria finally stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Mr. Reed, before accusing one of my executives of misconduct, did you verify the identity of his legal spouse through public records? Mason hesitated. No. Did you obtain a certified marriage certificate before presenting your findings? No. Did you interview a single witness who had actually attended the wedding? Again, no. Victoria nodded once. So your report is based entirely on assumption. Ryan stepped forward. Victoria, that's not. She turned to him. Please don't interrupt while I'm questioning your witness. The room fell silent again. Ryan slowly sat back down. He had no choice. Victoria looked at Mason. One final question. Who hired you? Mason answered immediately. Mr. Ryan Mitchell. And who instructed you to conclude that Olivia Bennett was Ethan Carter's wife? Mason looked toward Ryan. Ryan's jaw tightened. I never instructed. Victoria spoke over him. Mr. Reed, I'm asking you. Mason took a slow breath. Mr. Mitchell told me that Olivia Bennett was the person I should focus on. A murmur spread across the boardroom. One of the independent directors frowned. So the investigation started with a predetermined conclusion. Mason lowered his eyes. It appears that way. Ryan slammed his hand on the table. That's not what happened. I told him she was a person of interest. Marcus, who had been standing quietly near the back of the room, finally spoke. Would you like us to play the recording? Ryan froze. His head turned sharply. What recording? Marcus held up his phone. The phone call between you and Mr. Reed. Ryan stared. That's illegal. Marcus answered calmly, IT isn't. Mr. Reed consented after discovering he had been misled. Every eye shifted to Mason. He nodded once. I did. Ryan's confidence cracked for the first time. Victoria didn't press the advantage immediately. Instead, she looked around the table. I believe Mr. Mitchell requested this emergency meeting. Does anyone still believe the purpose of this meeting was corporate governance? No one answered. Director Helen Brooks adjusted her glasses. IT appears we were given incomplete information. Another director spoke. A team minimum. Ryan tried to recover. This doesn't change the fact that Ethan concealed his marriage. I stood. I never lied. Ryan looked at me. You told everyone you were single. I told my coworkers I wasn't. Discussing my private life. Those aren't the same statement. Claire immediately placed a printed copy of the employee handbook in front of the board. Section 8.4. But she looked toward the directors. The company encourages employees to disclose potential conflicts of interest. IT does not require employees to disclose their marital status. Director Brooks read the page herself. She slowly nodded that she's correct. Ryan opened his mouth, then stopped. For the first time since this meeting began, he had nowhere to go. Victoria calmly closed her folder. Now that we've addressed the allegation against Mr. Carter, I'd like to address another matter. Marcus dimmed the lights. The screen behind Ryan went black. A second later, a different presentation appeared. Its title was only 3 words. Executive Archive Access. Ryan's face changed. Marcus advanced to the first slide. A timeline appeared. Late-night entries. Executive records. Archive vault. Restricted financial storage. Every unauthorized access over the last 11 years. The room grew quiet. Marcus spoke evenly. Last night, our cybersecurity team completed a forensic audit that we discovered repeated access to archived executive records. He changed slides. The access occurred using cloned executive credentials. Another slide point 3 days ago. Someone attempted to alter historical approval records. Another, yesterday. Someone entered Mr. Carter's office without authorization. Ryan interrupted. What does any of this have to do with me? Marcus looked at him. We're getting there. He pressed the remote once more. A photograph appeared. The boardroom became silent. IT showed Ryan entering the executive archives corridor 3 nights earlier. Timestamp .11:43 p.m. Ryan immediately stood. That's impossible. Marcus didn't react. The security camera disagrees. Ryan looked around the room. You think that's enough? No, Marcus smiled. Faintly. It isn't. He changed slides again. The next image showed a digital access log. Credential used. CEO Master Access Card. Cloned. Followed by another line. Secondary authentication. Ryan Mitchell. Director Brooks looked up sharply. Secondary authentication requires a personal code. Marcus nodded. It does. Ryan's face lost color. Victoria looked directly at him. Only one person knows your authentication code. Ryan didn't answer. Would you like to explain why your credentials were used to enter executive archives after midnight? The boardroom was completely silent. Ryan looked from face to face. No1 came to his defense. Not one director, finally. He smiled. A strange smile. Almost relieved. You still don't understand. Victoria narrowed her eyes. Understand what? Ryan slowly picked up his briefcase. You think I'm the person you've been looking for? He looked directly at me. I'm not. He turned toward Victoria. That I've been protecting someone. The room froze. My father's letter flashed through my mind. The person I'm looking for isn't the one stealing money. He's protecting the person who is. Ryan laughed quietly. Looks like Daniel Carter figured it out before I did. Then he reached into his briefcase. Marcus moved instantly. Don't. Security officers rushed forward. Ryan slowly raised. Not a weapon. A sealed envelope. Across the front. In faded handwriting. Were 6 words. For Charles Sinclair. Never delivered. Victoria stared at it. Her composure finally cracked. Where did you get that? Ryan looked at her with an expression I couldn't read. Ask Richard Whitmore. Then, before anyone could stop him, he let the envelope fall onto the conference table. I've been waiting 11 years for someone to ask the right question. The boardroom remained silent long after the envelope landed on the table. No1 reached for it. No1 even looked away from it. The faded handwriting across the front seemed to weigh more than every financial report stacked in front of the directors. For Charles Sinclair. Never delivered. Ryan stepped back from the table and folded his hands. I think, he said quietly, it's time someone finally read it. Marcus moved first. He picked up the envelope without taking his eyes off Ryan. Where did you get this? Ryan smiled. You already know the answer. Whitmore. Ryan didn't respond. He didn't have to. Marcus carefully examined the seal. That it hasn't been opened. Victoria's eyes remained fixed on the handwriting. That I recognize it. I turned toward her. You do? She nodded slowly. Daniel's. My chest tightened. My father's. She looked at me. That he wrote exactly like this. Marcus held the envelope up to the light. The paper is old at least 10 years. Claire quietly added. The ink matches the notebook. Frank closed his eyes for a brief moment. He actually finished the letter. Victoria looked toward Marcus. Open it. Marcus hesitated. It's addressed to your grandfather. Victoria's voice hardened. My grandfather isn't here. She met Marcus's eyes. We are? Marcus broke the seal. Inside was a single folded page, NO company letterhead, NO signature at the top. Just neat handwriting. The handwriting I had seen all over my father's notebook. Marcus unfolded the page and began reading aloud. Charles, by the time you receive this letter. I hope I'm wrong. If I'm right. Someone inside Hamilton Capital has already convinced you that I'm becoming paranoid. Ryan lowered his head slightly, almost as if he had heard these words before. Marcus continued. I'm asking you for one thing. Do not trust conclusions that arrive too quickly. The guilty person has spent years teaching everyone where not to look. Director Helen Brooks adjusted her glasses. That's remarkably specific. Marcus continued. You once told me that money always leaves a trail. You were mistaken. People leave longer ones. I felt. Victoria glanced toward me. Those words sounded almost identical to what my father had written in his notebook. Follow the signatures, not the money. Marcus reached the final paragraph. His voice slowed. If I disappear before I finish this investigation, don't waste time searching for the thief. Search for the man who keeps saving him. He's far more dangerous. Marcus lowered the letter. The room became completely silent. Ryan quietly spoke. My father used to say something similar. Every head turned toward him. You never mentioned your father. Victoria said. Ryan smiled sadly. Nobody ever asked. Director Brooks broke the silence. Mr. Mitchell. Earlier you claimed you weren't the person we're looking for. I wasn't lying. Marcus crossed his arms, then started talking. Ryan looked around the room. I've worked at Hamilton Capital for 11 years. Everyone knows that. They don't know why. Victoria narrowed her eyes. You said you began as a legal intern. I did, but I didn't apply. Frank frowned. What do you mean? Ryan took a slow breath. Richard Whitmore recruited me personally. The room froze. He interviewed me. He paid my tuition. He gave me my first office. Marcus stared at him. Why? Ryan laughed quietly. I asked him the same question. What did he say? Ryan's expression became distant. He said, one day you'll have to clean up a mess you didn't create. No one interrupted. Ryan continued. For years, I believed he was talking about corporate corruption. I was wrong. Victoria folded her arms. What was he talking about? Ryan looked directly at her. Your family. The words echoed through the room. Director Brooks frowned. Careful. Ryan nodded respectfully. I'm not accusing Ms. Sinclair. I'm talking about decisions made before she became CEO. Victoria didn't argue. Instead, she asked, my grandfather? Ryan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the letter. Daniel Carter warned him that he refused to listen. Frank shook his head. No, Charles trusted Daniel. Ryan looked at him, but he trusted him. Until someone made sure he didn't. The missing meeting. Claire suddenly stood. Wait. Everyone turned toward her. She was already typing furiously. What is it? I've been comparing executive calendars. Marcus walked over. And there was one meeting that disappeared. Victoria frowned. What do you mean disappeared? Claire rotated the screen. There should be a calendar entry here. There isn't. Marcus leaned closer. It was deleted. Claire nodded, but not completely. She enlarged a fragment recovered from the server archive. Only part of the text remained. Attendees. Charles Sinclair, Daniel Carter, Richard Whitmore. Redacted. Ryan stared at the screen. No, Marcus looked at him. You recognize it. Ryan slowly nodded. I've seen that meeting before. Victoria's voice remained calm. Where? Ryan answered without looking away from the screen. In Whitmore's office. Silence. He kept one photograph on his desk. What photograph? Ryan swallowed. The four men standing together. Frank frowned. Point 4. There are only 3 names. Ryan finally looked at us. Exactly. The 4th man was never listed. An unexpected visitor before anyone could ask another question. The boardroom doors opened. Every conversation stopped. The receptionist looked terrified. Ms. Sinclair. Marcus immediately stepped forward. What happened? She looked directly at Victoria. There's a gentleman downstairs. No appointment. No identification that he insists. She hesitated. That Ethan Carter is expecting him. I frowned. I've never. The receptionist interrupted. He gave me only one name. Marcus's hand instinctively moved toward his phone. What name? The receptionist looked at me. He said, tell Ethan that Noah Carter has come home. The world seemed to stop. An my heartbeat thundered in my ears. Noah? Carter. My older brother. The brother who had disappeared 12 years earlier. The brother everyone, including the police, believed was dead. I stared at the receptionist, unable to speak. Victoria slowly turned toward me. You told me. Your brother died. I swallowed hard. So did everyone else. Marcus was already issuing orders into his headset. Lock down the building. Nobody leaves. Nobody enters. But deep inside, I already knew that if the man downstairs really was Noah, then everything I believed about my family and my father's final investigation was about to change forever. N01 moved. N01 spoke. The name Noah Carter hung over the boardroom like a verdict. I looked at the receptionist. Say it again. She swallowed. He introduced himself as Noah Carter. Did he show any identification? No. Did he say why he was here? He said. She glanced at me. Tell Ethan I'm late by 12 years. My knees almost gave out. Only Victoria's hand on my arm kept me standing. Marcus was already speaking into his headset. Visual confirmation. Keep him in the lobby. No physical contact unless he becomes aggressive. A voice answered through the earpiece. Copy. Ryan remained unusually quiet. Too quiet that I turned toward him. You knew? Ryan met my eyes. No, if I had, I would have left this building already. That wasn't the answer I expected. For the first time since this investigation began, Ryan looked genuinely unsettled. Downstairs, Marcus insisted on going first. Two corporate security officers entered the lobby before the rest of us. They searched the area. No weapons. No suspicious bags. Only one man sitting calmly on a leather sofa. When I stepped into the lobby, he stood. He was taller than I remembered. Older. Scar ran from his left temple to the edge of his jaw. His hair had turned darker than mine. But his eyes, the same gray eyes my father had. He looked at me for several long seconds, then smiled. You got taller. I couldn't answer. He laughed quietly. I suppose that's what happens when 12 years pass. Victoria stayed half a step behind me. Marcus remained between Noah and everyone else. State your name. The man never looked away from me. Noah James Carter. Date of birth? He answered without hesitation. Marcus continued asking questions. Childhood address. My mother's birthday. The name of our old dog. He answered everyone correctly. Finally, Marcus looked at me. He knows things that aren't public. I slowly stepped forward. When you left, how old was I? No, it didn't even pause. 16. You were furious because dad wouldn't let you quit school to work. My throat tightened. Only one person knew about that argument. My brother. I whispered. It really is you for the first time since entering the building. Noah's smile disappeared. I'm sorry. 12 years missing. Marcus led everyone into a private executive conference room. The doors closed. No reporters. No board members. Only the people already involved. Victoria, Marcus, Claire, Frank, Ryan, Noah, and me. Marcus placed a recorder on the table. Start talking. Noah nodded. I owe everyone that. He looked directly at me. The night I disappeared. I wasn't kidnapped. I frowned. What? I left. The room fell silent. You just walked away? I didn't have a choice. Frank slammed a hand on the table. Daniel searched for you for months. I know that he nearly destroyed himself. I know. You let your family believe you were dead. Noah closed his eyes. I know. The guilt in his voice sounded real, but it didn't make the anger disappear. I stood. You could have called. I couldn't. You could have written. I couldn't. You had 12 years. He finally looked up. I wasn't hiding from you. I was hiding for you. Whitmore's choice. Victoria spoke quietly. Richard. Whitmore. Noah nodded. He found me. When? The same week your father started asking questions. Marcus narrowed his eyes. He recruited you. No, he rescued me. Nobody understood. Noah continued. I witnessed something I wasn't supposed to. What? A meeting. Every person in the room leaned forward. The meeting Claire found in the deleted calendar. Silence. My father was there. Yes. Charles Sinclair? Yes. Whitmore? Yes. And the fourth man? Noah's face became unreadable. I never saw his face. What do you mean? He arrived after the lights were turned off. Marcus frowned. That makes no sense that IT wasn't supposed to. Noah leaned forward. They argued. For nearly an hour, MY father kept demanding documents. Whitmore kept telling him to leave, and the fourth man never raised his voice. Victoria asked, "What did he say?" Noah answered slowly. Only one sentence. The room fell completely silent. "If Daniel Carter won't stop digging, make sure he never finishes." A chill spread through every person in the room. The truth about Whitmore Ryan finally spoke that I knew it. Everyone looked at him. Knew what? Ryan turned toward Noah. Whitmore wasn't protecting the mastermind. He was protecting Daniel. Noah nodded. Exactly. Marcus frowned. Explain. Noah took a deep breath after that meeting. Whitmore found me. He told me my father had become a target. He said if anyone connected me to Daniel, they'd use me against him. Victoria looked stunned. So he hid you? Yes. Marcus crossed his arms. For 12 years? Not willingly. What changed? Noah reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. Marcus tensed immediately. Noah slowly removed a worn leather wallet. From inside it, he unfolded an old photograph. He slid it across the table. I picked it up. IT showed 4 people. My father, Charles Sinclair, Richard Whitmore, and a fourth man. Only. His face had been carefully cut out. Someone had physically removed it from the photograph. The room was silent. Noah pointed to the empty space. That's the man. Marcus asked, "Why cut him out?" Noah looked directly at me. Because Whitmore wanted only one person to know who he was. You got a final message. Noah handed me another item. A small brass K, EY to NO markings, NO label. I've carried that for 12 years. What is it? Whitmore told me to give it to you. Only after your father was proven right. Victoria frowned. Proven right about what? Noah looked around the room. That the protector still worked inside Hamilton Capital. Marcus immediately asked, "What does the key open?" Noah smiled faintly. I don't know. You never asked? I did. What did Whitmore say? Noah repeated the words from memory. When Ethan finds the lock, he'll already know the truth. Before anyone could speak again, Claire's laptop chimed. She stared at the screen. Her face turned white. Marcus walked over. What happened? She pointed silently. The cybersecurity dashboard displayed a single flashing alert. Executive Archive Vault access time. 10:47 a.m. Marcus frowned. That's impossible. The vault is sealed. Claire swallowed. Not anymore. Another line appeared. Biometric authentication accepted. Everyone stared at the screen. The authorized user name slowly populated. Not Ryan Mitchell. Not Victoria Sinclair. Not Marcus Hill. The room seemed to stop breathing as the final name appeared. Authorized user. Daniel Carter, my father's name. A man who had been dead for more than 10 years. The vault had just accepted his biometric credentials. Victoria looked at me. Marcus looked at the screen. Noah whispered only 3 words that he planned this. The alert stayed on Claire's screen. N01 spoke. N01 even breathed. Authorized user. Daniel Carter, my father's name glowed in bright red letters beneath the security warning. Marcus was the first to move. Claire, her fingers were already flying across the keyboard. I'm checking the authentication logs. Tell me it isn't real. I wish I could. The room remained frozen as lines of encrypted data streamed across her monitor. 30 seconds later, she looked up. IT wasn't a password. IT wasn't a badge. IT wasn't even an administrator override. Marcus frowned. What was it? Claire slowly turned the screen toward us. A biometric authentication. My stomach tightened. My father died 11 years ago. I know. So how could? She interrupted quietly. The system believes Daniel Carter just identified himself. N01 leaves. Marcus immediately switched into command mode. He pressed the emergency button on his phone. Level 4 lockdown. Every executive floor door clicked simultaneously. Steel security shutters lowered over the elevator entrances throughout Hamilton Capital. Employees stopped working and looked around in confusion. Victoria looked toward Marcus. Internal announcement. Marcus nodded. No mention of the vault. Agreed. Within seconds, a company-wide message appeared on every computer screen. Temporary security audit in progress. Please remain on your assigned floor until further notice. To everyone else. It looked like a routine cybersecurity exercise. To us. Someone had just entered the most restricted archive in the company, using my dead father's identity. The walk to the vault, the executive archive vault, occupied a section of the building very few employees even knew existed. NO windows, NO company signs, NO floor number. The elevator required 3 separate authorizations before it would move. Marcus scanned his badge. Victoria placed her palm against the biometric reader. Finally, Claire entered a rotating encryption code. The doors closed. N01 spoke during the descent. The silence felt heavier than anything anyone could say. That I finally looked toward Noah. That you've been here before. IT wasn't a question. That he nodded once. Only once. With Whitmore? Yes. What did he show you? The door. Nothing else. He told me that. Noah's voice softened as he repeated the words from memory. Point, one day your brother will come here. When he does, tell him not to believe the first thing he sees. Victoria exchanged a glance with Marcus. Marcus quietly muttered. Another warning. That a door already opened. The elevator stopped. The reinforced steel door slid apart. Marcus drew a compact flashlight from his jacket. The hallway lights were still on. NO broken locks. NO alarms. NO signs of forced entry. At the end of the corridor stood a massive titanium vault door. Open. Only 6 inches. Marcus stopped everyone with one hand. Nobody touches anything. That he slowly approached. The locking mechanism showed no damage. NO scratches. NO pry marks. The vault hadn't been broken into. IT had been opened. Legally, using valid credentials. Marcus gently pushed the door wider. The room beyond came into view. Rows of climate-controlled cabinets lined the walls. Every cabinet remained sealed. Every shelf looked untouched. Except one. Cabinet 12. That its drawer had been left open. Victoria quietly said, "That's impossible." Claire checked her tablet. Cabinet 12 stores. She stopped reading. Marcus looked at her. What? She swallowed. Personal investigative. Records.my pulse quicken.my fathers. Claire nodded. Among others, the empty folder. Marcus carefully opened the drawer. Only one folder lay inside. The label read, Daniel Carter. I stepped closer. Marcus handed me a pair of gloves. You open it. The folder felt strangely light. Too light. That I lifted the cover. And inside. That nothing. NO reports. NO photographs. NO notes. Only a single white envelope. Across the front, in my father's handwriting, were 5 words. That you're finally asking why. Victoria stared at the envelope. That he knew. Marcus looked at me. He expected this day. That I carefully opened it. Inside rested one sheet of paper. Only 3 handwritten lines. Ethan. That if you're reading this, you opened the wrong drawer. I blinked. What? Marcus took the note. His expression changed. Victoria frowned. What is it? Marcus turned the paper over. On the back, someone had drawn a simple floor plan. Not of the company. Of the vault itself. One cabinet had been circled. Not cabinet 12. Cabinet 7. Noah slowly smiled. That he wasn't protecting the files. He was protecting the map. Cabinet 7. Marcus walked directly to cabinet 7. Unlike the others, its electronic lock showed a blinking amber light. Claire checked the system logs. This cabinet wasn't accessed. Marcus frowned. Then why is the indicator flashing? He examined the keypad. Something had been wedged beneath the metal frame. A tiny folded strip of paper. He carefully removed it. One sentence had been typed in block letters. Some secrets should stay buried. Marcus looked around the room. We're not alone. Every instinct in my body sharpened. Victoria slowly reached into her jacket and removed the small brass key Noah had given me. She placed it in my hand. I have a feeling. I looked at cabinet 7. That there was no visible keyhole. Only an electronic scanner. This doesn't fit. Victoria smiled faintly. My grandfather taught me something. What? When people build safes, they always hide one mechanical override. Marcus immediately began examining the cabinet frame. 5 seconds later, he stopped. There, hidden beneath the lower edge. A nearly invisible brass lock. Exactly the size of the key in my hand. I looked at Victoria. She nodded to go ahead. I inserted the key. It turned smoothly. A soft click echoed through the vault. Then, every light inside cabinet 7 illuminated at once. The electronic lock disengaged. The drawer slowly slid open by itself. Inside wasn't a stack of financial reports or a ledger. Or cash.it contained a single leather-bound journal, and resting on top of it. A family photograph. It showed my father, my mother, Noah.me. And standing beside us, smiling directly at the camera, was Richard Whitmore. I stared at the picture. My voice barely worked. He knew my family. Noah quietly corrected me that no, he was part of it, for several long seconds. Nobody reached into Cabinet 7. The photograph had changed everything. Richard Whitmore wasn't standing at the edge of the picture like a business associate. He wasn't posing stiffly beside my father as if they'd met at a corporate event. He was standing beside my mother. One arm rested lightly on Noah's shoulder. My father was smiling. Not the polite smile he'd worn in company photographs, but a real smile. The kind I'd only seen in old family albums. Victoria looked at me that you've never seen this before. I slowly shook my head. Noted my mother showed me every photo album we had after Dad died. This picture wasn't in any of them. Frank leaned closer. I remember that barbecue. Everyone turned toward him. That he pointed at the photograph. It was Daniel's birthday. Whitmore came with his wife. That I frowned. He had a wife? Frank nodded. Emily. She and your mother were close friends. That I looked at Noah. You knew him? I was 12. That I thought he was just Uncle Richard. The words hit me harder than I expected. Uncle Richard. A man I'd spent the last several days believing was either the architect of a conspiracy or the man protecting one. At the journal, Marcus carefully lifted the leather journal from the cabinet. Unlike the notebook we'd already recovered, this one wasn't filled with calculations. The first page carried only a titled, "If Ethan ever finds this, no date, no signature." Just those 5 words. Marcus handed it to me. That it's yours. That my fingers tightened around the worn leather cover. That I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. To my father's. The first entry wasn't a report. It wasn't evidence. That it was a letter. Ethan. If you're reading this, then 2 things have happened. First, that I've already failed. Second, you refused to stop asking questions. I smiled despite everything. That sounded exactly like him. He continued. That if you reach this journal, don't waste time deciding whether Richard Whitmore was my enemy. That he wasn't. Victoria quietly exhaled. Marcus folded his arms. So Whitmore was telling the truth. That I kept reading. Richard made many mistakes. Betrayal wasn't one of them. Frank closed his eyes. That I knew it. The hidden agreement. The next several pages weren't written in paragraphs. They were dated entries, almost like a captain's log. April 3. Charles still believes the theft is financial. Richard agrees with me. Someone wants us chasing money because we're getting too close to influence. April 18. Richard suggested creating false records. If someone steals them, that we'll know exactly where they're hiding. Marcus looked up. The fake files. Victoria nodded. The ones Ryan kept searching for. I turned another page. May 2. Noah saw too much. Richard volunteered to disappear him. I hate this plan. It's the only one that keeps my family alive. I stopped reading. My hands began to shake. I looked at Noah. You knew? He nodded slowly. I didn't know everything, but I knew Dad approved it. For 12 years, I'd blamed Noah for disappearing. He hadn't abandoned us. He'd obeyed our father. A name appears. The next entry was different. The handwriting became uneven. As if my father had been writing quickly. May 11. Today, I finally confirmed the protector's identity. Everyone in the vault leaned closer. I turned the page. The next line had been scratched out so heavily that the paper had nearly torn. Only one sentence remained visible beneath it. He isn't acting alone anymore. Marcus immediately photographed the page. We can recover the original writing. Claire nodded. The pressure marks should still be there. Hope surged through me. For the first time, we weren't looking for scattered clues. We were holding the investigation itself. The real purpose of the vault. Victoria walked slowly around the vault. She studied the cabinets one by one. There are 12. Marcus nodded. So? She looked back at Cabinet 7. My grandfather designed this room. I know that he hated coincidence. Marcus frowned. What are you thinking? She counted silently. Point 7 wasn't random. Frank suddenly snapped his fingers. The board. Everyone looked at him. Point 12 original directors. Victoria's eyes widened. Each cabinet represents one. Marcus immediately checked the cabinet labels. Point 1, point 2, point 3. Each carried only a number. No names, no departments. Just numbers. Claire opened the archive blueprint. Marcus looked at her. What? The cabinet assignments were encrypted, meaning the numbers corresponded to director identification codes. Victoria looked toward Cabinet 7. My grandfather gave Daniel access to one specific director's archive. I looked at the journal. My father wasn't hiding from everyone. He was watching one person in empty space. Marcus continued examining Cabinet 7. Something caught his attention. He reached into the back panel. There should be another compartment. What? He knocked gently against the metal wall. A hollow sound answered. Claire checked the engineering schematic. He's right. The cabinet is deeper than it should be. Marcus searched the edges until his fingers found a hidden latch. A second compartment slowly opened. Everyone held their breath. Inside, nothing except dust. Marcus frowned. It was emptied recently. Claire checked the sensors. The compartment was opened. She looked at the timestamp. 43 minutes ago. Every head turned to 43 minutes. Marcus nodded grimly. That's exactly when the system authenticated Daniel Carter's biometric profile. Silence settled over the vault. Someone had entered, opened the hidden compartment, taken whatever had been inside, then deliberately left the journal behind. Victoria slowly looked around the room. They wanted us to read this. I frowned. Why? She answered quietly. Because the journal tells us what Daniel knew. She looked at the empty compartment. But whatever was hidden here tells us who the killer is. At that exact moment, Marcus's secure radio crackled. His expression changed immediately. Repeat that. The voice on the other end sounded urgent. Sir, we've got movement. Where? The suspect we arrested this morning. Marcus's face hardened. Has escaped. The vault fell silent. Then came the second sentence. And he's not running away. Marcus looked at all of us. He's coming here. Marcus lowered his radio. Nobody spoke. The only sound inside the vault was the soft hum of the climate control system. Claire broke the silence. How did he escape? Marcus's eyes remained fixed on the hallway outside the vault. I'll ask after we survive this. He turned toward two security officers standing near the entrance. Seal the corridor. Nobody comes through that door without my authorization. Yes, sir. Heavy magnetic locks engaged with a loud metallic click. For the first time since we had entered the vault, we were completely cut off from the rest of Hamilton Capital. He didn't come alone. Marcus checked the hallway cameras on his tablet. 3 live video feeds appeared. Hallway east, hallway west, elevator access. All empty. Then one camera flickered. Static covered half the screen. Claire frowned. That's not interference. What is it? Someone is looping the camera feed. Marcus looked up immediately. They have help. Victoria folded her arms. Inside the company. Marcus nodded. They've had inside help from the beginning. Ryan had remained unusually quiet ever since entering the vault. Now he stepped beside Marcus. I know who disabled the cameras. Marcus turned sharply. You do? Ryan nodded once. There are only 3 people with enough network privileges. Claire corrected him. 4. Ryan looked at her. Who's the 4th? Claire answered quietly. Me. Ryan shook his head. Not you. He pointed toward the blinking monitor. The person who did this doesn't think like an engineer. He thinks like an investigator. Marcus immediately understood. They're watching us. Ryan nodded. And they've been watching us since the board meeting. The journal's final pages while Marcus organized the security response. I continued reading my father's journal. The final section had been folded inward, almost as if he had wanted to delay whoever found it. The first sentence stopped me cold. If you're reading this beside Victoria Sinclair, trust her completely. I looked up. Victoria met my eyes. What is it? Without speaking, I handed her the journal. She read the line. For the first time since I'd known her, her eyes filled with emotion. She quickly turned the page before anyone noticed. The next entry read, Victoria will eventually discover that this investigation began long before she became sane. She'll blame herself. Don't let her. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. Frank looked away. Giving her a moment she hadn't asked for. I placed a hand over hers. Then why father knew you? She nodded. He helped train me during my first year here. You never told me that he made me promise. What promise? That if anything happened to him, I'd protect his family before I protected the company. Silence settled over the vault. Then Victoria smiled sadly. I've spent 11 years trying to keep that promise. The recording tucked into the back cover of the journal was a tiny memory card. Claire carefully removed it. This wasn't mentioned anywhere. Marcus looked at her. Can you read it? She nodded. I'll need a secure laptop. Within seconds she connected the card. Only one file appeared. Final_message.mp for the timestamp showed it had been recorded 11 years earlier. Claire clicked play. The screen remained black for several seconds. Then my father's face appeared. He looked older than I remembered, tired, but calm. He looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, then I wasn't fast enough. Nobody interrupted. Even Marcus stood perfectly still. Why father continued. Ethan, Noah. I'm sorry. He paused, then smiled. Before you start blaming Richard. Remember something that he saved both of you. Noah lowered his head, and my father continued that you're going to spend a lot of time asking who betrayed us. That's the wrong question, Marcus whispered. The same pattern that my father nodded as if he had heard him. Ask who benefited every time the investigation slowed down. Claire immediately began taking notes. My father reached toward the camera, holding a photograph. The same family photograph we had found in Cabinet 7. Except this version wasn't damaged. The fourth man's face was still intact. Every person in the room leaned forward. Just as the camera focused, the video froze. Claire frowned. I know the screen went black. A single message appeared. File no. Claire immediately tried recovering the data. Marcus looked at the remaining runtime. There's another 12 minutes missing. Ryan whispered. Someone edited it. Claire shook her head. Not recently. The corruption happened 11 years ago. Victoria looked at the blank screen. Daniel knew someone might eventually watch this. Marcus slowly nodded. He separated the evidence. The journal tells us what happened. The missing video shows who did it. The visitor, a loud metallic sound echoed through the hallway. One of the security doors had opened. Marcus drew his sidearm. Positions. The officers stepped forward. Footsteps approached. Steady. Unhurried. Not the footsteps of someone fleeing. The figure appeared in the doorway. Not the escaped suspect, an elderly man wearing a dark overcoat, silver hair, walking cane, sharp blue eyes. Victoria stared. Her voice was barely audible. Richard. The man smiled gently. It's been a long time. Victoria. Noah stood immediately. You shouldn't have come. Richard Whitmore looked at him. I promised Daniel I would. Marcus never lowered his weapon. Hands where I can see them. Whitmore slowly raised both hands. I understand. Marcus stepped closer. Give me one reason not to arrest you. Whitmore answered without hesitation. Because if you arrest me now, the real killer wins. Ryan took one step forward. You knew he'd come. Whitmore nodded. I knew he'd have no choice. He looked directly at me. Ethan. I had. Imagine this moment 100 different ways. None of them prepared me for seeing the man my father had trusted. The man who had hidden my brother. The man everyone believed was dead. Whitmore reached into his coat very slowly. Marcus raised his weapon. Don't. Whitmore stopped. It's only a document. Marcus motioned for him to place it on the floor. Whitmore complied. Marcus picked it up. It was a sealed personnel file. Across the front were printed 3 words. Director number 7. Victoria's eyes widened. The cabinet. Whitmore nodded. Daniel finally found it. I stepped closer. Who's Director 7? Whitmore looked around the vault, then answered with absolute certainty. The man who has manipulated Hamilton Capital for 11 years. He paused. And he's sitting at the charity gala in less than 48 hours, expecting all of you to fail. One spoke. Whitmore looked directly at me. Ethan, your father solved the case. He simply ran out of time to prove it. Marcus slowly opened the personnel file. Inside was a single sheet. He looked at the name. His expression changed instantly. He closed the file again before anyone else could see it. Victoria noticed. So you know. Marcus nodded once. I do. Is it someone in this building? A long silence followed. Then Marcus answered. Yes. Whitmore looked toward the vault entrance. We have less than 2 days. The gala isn't a celebration. It's an execution. He met my eyes. Unless we expose Director 7 before the first toast, someone else in this room is going to die.